Okay, great. All right. So good evening, everybody. Calling to order the Madison Board of Selectmen regular meeting for August 24th. Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. All right. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the meetings of, do we want to do this in a group or do we want to do it individually? Is everybody good going as one group?
Yes.
I'm good with the group.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of July 27th, August 5th, August 6th, August 7th, August 10th, August 12th, and August 19th?
So moved, but we clearly have had a busy summer.
Yeah. Can I get a second on that?
Second.
Okay, great. All right, all in favor? Or any discussion first? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay.
Aye.
Any abstentions? I can't remember if anybody. Okay, no. All right, great. The meeting minutes passed. And the next item on the agenda is the first Selectwoman's update. And just real quickly, our schools will be opening the first week of September. We will be going to the hybrid model with a reassessment of that in early October. The town is going to be partnering again, as we always do with the school district, to offer before and after school care programs. So we're working with them to kind of get that ironed out, given the new cohort structure for the school system. We're also looking at possibility of offering a study center or daycare option for distance learning. Many parents are looking for alternatives of where their kids can go for the days that they are not scheduled to be in school, but they still need to be focused and logging in at times to their distance learning program. So we've been exploring a couple of different options, and we're hoping to make a further announcement by the end of this week, hopefully, about whether or not that's going to be something that the town can offer to the community. The sports programs, I know many people are following closely what's going on between the Department of Public Health and CIAC in terms of school sports. I guess yesterday evening they came out with a possible proposal, but we're kind of waiting to review that and have an internal discussion about how we see the sports programs rolling out within the town. So it's been a very fluctuating situation. And so once we have a more definitive kind of path forward, we'll certainly update the public on that. A lot of activity going on around elections. We completed on August 11th the presidential primary, and because of the tight votes between one of the Republican candidates, the town, the entire district for the congressional district had to complete a recount. So that was held the next Tuesday. And so now we're kind of getting things ramped up for November. And obviously there's been a big effort to encourage people to move forward with absentee voting. And that's required a lot of more work from the town clerk standpoint and the registrar's office. And they're trying to put together their work plan because it's a bit more labor intensive, having to deal with absentee ballots. The current intention is that the Secretary of State is going to be mailing a absentee ballot request to all registered voters in the town of Madison, and that'll be coming directly from the Secretary of State. And then any kind of request for ballots would then be sent to the town clerk, and the town clerk will be sending out the actual ballots. So we're kind of working through that process. We're putting together kind of a budget about how we're going to be able to have adequate staffing as well as equipment needed to do that. The voting will continue to take place as it did for the primary at both District 1 is now at Polson School. Just a reminder to people, it used to be at the Senior Center. It's been moved because of the spacing needs for social distancing voting to Polson. And then District 2 will continue to vote at Brown School. And that day is actually a school holiday, so we won't have some of those issues that normally we have, when students are in school and we have voting. So I think I'm hoping to provide at our next meeting in September a little bit more about any kind of budget issues and things that the town has had to do in order to accommodate the increase in absentee ballots that we're expecting for November. In terms of town operations, I mean, we're still kind of operating as we've been operating all summer on an appointment-only basis. We kind of have been linking this to phase 3 with the hope that we might move into phase 3, but I think a lot of the activities that's happened recently, and I'm sure we've all seen the news that came out about Danbury in terms of their recent outbreak of COVID positive, an increase in people testing positive for COVID. So we're going to kind of in a wait and see mode still, and we'll see if there's any kind of new plans that the government rolls out in the state. So we're still kind of operating as we have been all summer. Beach and Rec is winding down for the summer. Our staffing at all the beaches, including the gate staff, as well as the lifeguards, all of that is subject to end on Labor Day, as it always traditionally has. And we'll talk a little bit more just about the beaches. We'll do a quick update later in this meeting just to talk about kind of what we've seen through the summer. Senior Center has been closed for programming. The governor did announce that Senior Center could open potentially September 1st. But it was kind of an interesting way of saying, but if you're over 65 or have a any kind of conditions, you shouldn't go to a senior center anyway. So I'm like, most people are over 65. So we're kind of trying to sort through a little bit of the guidance that they came out with. I know that Austin has done a tremendous job putting together socially distanced programming for this center. He worked on that earlier in the summer. And we're going to have an internal discussion about what we think is feasible, and that, from a public health standpoint, people are comfortable with us offering through the senior center. So there might be a little bit more there as we work through the recent guidance that came out. And then we're also in the process of launching a new community communication system. And I just wanted to alert the public that you'll be getting some notices about this. And it's a system run by Everbridge, which is also the software group that is part of the CT Alert statewide system. So most people who have subscribed to CT Alerts got robocalls from me throughout the COVID emergency. And but the purpose of that is typically emergencies only, and they're supposed to be more urgent matters, life and death situations, urgent matters. And so we've been transitioning away from using that system, and we've been just relying on our email database through the town website. And so we realized that we really had a couple of communication problems here in town. One was reaching more broadly to the public that was more user-friendly, so we could offer robocalls, texting, and email, and then also internally with employees. So this Everbridge system is great because it has a lot of different functionality. And I'd be happy to come back and get more into this at one point because it kind of ties in with our communication plan. But I did want to tell people that if you want to start getting the new Madison alerts, you can go to the Madison website and click on the subscribe button, and that'll take you into the sign up for alerts. And then you click on Everbridge alerts box to get the process started. And there'll be two things we're sending out right now. One is going to be my weekly updates, which go out by email right now. And I think if you opt for it, also by text. And those will continue to happen on Wednesdays, my weekly updates. And then we'll also have other community type alerts. And so rather than having, you have to follow all these different departments, it'll all come through one thing called Madison Alerts. So we'll be getting some more information. We're still refining it, but we want to get as many people signed up, and then we'll hopefully start launching by mid-September, all communications going to the public through the Everbridge system. So I just thought it'd be helpful to give people a heads up, and if they want to start going to the website, we're going to start pushing people to get as many people as possible to subscribe to the system. So, so that's kind of an update from.
Peggy, will that be posted on social media too? Will we see that?
Yeah,
so
we're going to actually we're going to send out, some information that will be also posted on social media, all the Facebook pages, Twitter, and we'll kind of repeatedly just have the link, go sign up if you want to get alerts. And then I think we're also going to try to get, the senior center has a list of people so we can get the seniors. Because the nice thing is you can actually do robocalls through this as well. So if people want a voice call, you can do voice to text or text to voice. So it's a really powerful tool. A lot of other towns in the state do this, subscribe to this. We actually did subscribe to it a couple of years ago, and it was decided that it was not being used, so we stopped and we unsubscribed. But I think one thing we've learned, with everything going on through the COVID situation, is that people are eager to get local news and get local information more easily than the way they can get them now. So, so this would just be a really good tool for us going forward. And I think what I'd like to do is probably present in September a little bit more in detail the capabilities of this, and then how it fits into the communications plan that we had started earlier this year. So it's a really neat program.
Peggy, one of the pesky little details is when someone elects to receive a phone call, what will be on the caller ID through this Everbridge system?
Well, we can have it say what we want.
Okay.
And so that's the beauty of this too, because before it was the state of Connecticut system, so we didn't really have a lot of control. But here we can kind of pretty much call it whatever we want. And it might just say, Madison alerts, or and also a consistent phone number, so we can alert the public what that's going to be. Versus I know a lot of times with the emergency alerts, it's kind of this random Hartford number that people aren't familiar with and a lot of times don't pick up. So, but we have a lot of ability to customize it. And interestingly, just, there's also a database that we were able to pull into this. So we'll have like a nice robust set of numbers to at least reach out and get people to subscribe right away, which is good. Because right now our town list, the email list where I've been sending out my things, is like less than 1,000 people. But when you use the CT alert system, you're getting like 13,000 people. So there's a big difference from the end of June when we stopped using that. And then we used it a few times, obviously, for the storm, which was very appropriate for that, in terms of how information was getting out there. So, and there are a lot of people that are not on Facebook. And I'm learning more and more. People say, oh, they missed the robocalls. That's the way they got their information. So this is an opportunity for people to continue to stay in the loop without having to use an emergency system. So that's it for my update. And I guess moving on to any selectmen liaison reports. Does anybody have any updates? I don't know if a lot of meetings happened in August. I know a lot of people go away or you can't really go many places right now, but at least have taken time off. So
Aaron and I have been busy this summer. We've been interviewing. We've been doing the town facilities study, and we've been focused on, I think, 5 or 6 vendors that we interviewed, and we've come down to one. We will not announce the winner today, but I know we're in contracting process right now. But it was an enlightening process to go through that process.
Isn't that on our agenda?
Oh, later. So we're going to do it anyway. So yeah, okay, very good. I didn't want to pull any punches here. So, but yeah, so we're gonna.
Agenda, so.
Yeah,
I'm
perfect.
very excited about this project, that you can see.
Yes, it was a good one. I felt like the process was, for at least what we went through with Billy and Dave, very well run. We leveraged Collier's. I think each interviewee came in very prepared, and again, this study is going to be focused on town buildings, maintenance, usage, very strategic in nature. So we are, I think, beyond excited about where we're heading with this. So, and Aaron, do you want to add to that? I mean,
I'll wait till the agenda.
To the bomb drop.
Yeah, exactly. We'll just leave people hanging for right now.
Yeah, perfect.
I do
We're all
have.
about teasers.
I have two small updates. One is that I attended a planning and zoning meeting on last Thursday, the 20th, and the commission approved an application by JP Morgan Chase for to demolish the current building and build a new Chase Bank location at 634 Boston Post Road. So that's where Guilford Savings Bank formerly was.
Is that the right next to Madison Service Center?
Yes. Yep. So that
Perfect.
was after many meetings, they voted on that and tweaks to the site plan and then the other thing.
I know there were some concerns, Aaron, about I guess the original building was a historic building in some way, shape, or form. Is there
I believe there
anything
was
you can illuminate us on?
not too much. I think a portion of it was, and then it was built on. There was additional building built on. But I don't really, other than that, I have to admit, I didn't attend every single meeting
Yeah,
for this particular issue.
yeah, there's a lot.
The other, I just wanted to echo Peggy's comments about Austin and his team having done an excellent job at providing programming to seniors during this time through Zoom. And I was kind of surprised and happy to hear, only because I also work with seniors in my day-to-day life, that there were a lot of people participating over Zoom. So I thought that was great.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Maybe one more shout out, Peggy. So the library is doing tours. Our new library is up and running, and we've got tours running. I know there is a tour tomorrow night. But for those who have not gotten a tour yet, reach out to our library folks. I know they'd be happy to give you guys a tour. It's pretty incredible building. So
It's amazing. I did a tour a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it is a great building. So we're excited when we can have more use of it too. Okay, so I guess we got a lot to talk about tonight. So if there's no other, the only other thing I would say is the Board of Finance didn't meet in August, so it's meeting actually Wednesday night. So I don't have any specific updates on the Board of Finance right now. So I guess moving on to citizens' comments. Lauren, is there any citizens' comments?
Gus has his hand raised.
Okay.
Go ahead, Gus.
Okey doke. You can hear me?
Yes.
I
Yep.
just want, just a couple of comments on the memo that I sent you, just as a follow-up. I may have missed it, but does anybody on the Board of Selectmen, especially the older ones like Al, recall that any kind of a follow-up on the original proposals that we had for the existing systems that we have? Has any follow-up been done on that to see whether what was proposed in the RFPs has actually been actualized and how well those systems are working? I've always been concerned about the cost benefit of a lot of these things, and I'm wondering what the cost benefit analysis of the existing systems might be. And that being said, I'm wondering about the 600 plus acres we have up on Rockland Preserve, and it's up quite a bit. It's the highest elevation in the town of Madison, and whether the Energy Committee has taken a look at that as a potential site for a wind farm. And, I mentioned to you where I thought that we might consider a location for a solar farm, but it dawned on me today that that's not the only possibility. The other possibility is a wind farm. So I just ask you to consider those two things as you go ahead with this process, as to taking a look at the systems we already have, and are they working in the way that we thought they would, primarily from the point of view of savings. And number two is what might be the issues with having a wind farm up at Rockland Preserve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gus. I think when we talk about the solar project, one of the things that I think we do want to have is kind of a comprehensive overview overall of what our energy conservation strategy is. And I think the plan is to have that group come back and present kind of a longer term vision. What's on the agenda today is really focused on fixing a problem that we have currently. But thank you for bringing that to our attention. Any other citizen comments, Lauren? Nope. Okay.
Nope.
Okay. I think the next item on the agenda is a update from the Ad Hoc Government Study Committee. And so Lauren's going to be inviting in the members of that committee. And Lauren, do they have like presentation materials that will be coming up, or because I saw the memo, but
There is no PowerPoint, just the memo.
Okay.
I'm just trying to get them all over.
Good looking group here.
So first of all, just want to thank you for all the hard work that your committee has undertaken. And I know that the memo was very comprehensive, very thoughtful, and insightful. And so I want to thank you for all the hard work. And I guess I'll turn it over to you, Bob, if you want to kind of summarize where you guys came out. You're muted, Bob. Yep.
There you go. Oh, sorry about that. Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you for allowing us to take the opportunity to get this committee going. Should I run through the document? How would you like me to present it? I have a bunch of notes. I can run through it pretty quickly on how much time we have. I also want to give the availability of time to the committee members too, if they have anything to say as well. So
I think just a quick highlights of some of the key points, because I know it was quite a lengthy memo. And so I think that would be very helpful.
It is. So, starting out, the committee is formed with Jean Ferris, who's on. Great to see you, Jean, even though you're not a Connecticut resident anymore. Great to see you. Robert Hubbard, Lauren Noble, me, Robert F. Polito Jr., Peter Ruse, Robert Reinhardt, and Leo J. White. We met about 25 times. We had about 25 different interviews. We solicited town employee and general electorate opinion, and we held two public via questionnaires, and we held two public forums for additional public perspective as well. So what essentially came out of that is we found 4 areas or themes of possible investigation for the Charter Revision Committee. Those areas include voter engagement, separation of power, continuity, and executive authority. When we, and what I can get back to that when we get closer into at the end of the document. We interpreted the charge to essentially research, identify, and provide solutions for changes to the town's government structure, along with accompanying our charter changes, research, identify, and recommend permissible changes to the town's charter that are not accompanied by a government structure change. So on page 2, we talk about the statute. We've listed the possible forms of government that are allowable in Connecticut. That's pages 2 and 3. On bottom of page 3, we talk about our present form of government, which you're all very familiar with, but others may not be. And then on page 4, we talk about our collection of public opinion, our public comments, our public forums, the public questionnaire. The summary of those questionnaires are on page 5 and 6. And you can see the questions that we did ask, and then what percentages of interest in each of those subjects. And then we also, in those questions, we also provided some questions that are open-ended. And we did receive some pretty pretty important and I think interesting themes, and we talk about those on page 6. And then on page 7, we talk about the surveys, the town employee survey, the town employee interviews. Fascinating, by the way. It was really interesting doing that. We talked with our interviews with our former first selectmen. We talk about our current board. Thank you very much for your time as well when we chatted. And then we talked with other municipalities. We talked with Cheshire, Clinton, Fairfield, Guilford, North Branford, and Wallingford. Those are a little bit of a representation of different forms of government, dissimilar to ours for perspective, as well as to understand how those different forms of government worked. We wanted to conduct more interviews. However, we were just entering the pandemic and we weren't able to do that. A lot of folks were too busy running their own towns, as Peggy, you can obviously understand. On page 10, we talk about the different towns, and you can read that at your leisure. So the committee, I think very aptly took a problem and solution approach. And those 4 substantive themes included, as I mentioned before, voter engagement, separation of power, continuity, and executive authority. We've listed the problem statements. There are 3 problem statements, and some of them overlap. So I just didn't want anybody to think we missed one, but problem statement, voter engagement, separation of power, and executive authority are one problem statement. And we all realize that low voter turnout at town meetings and referendums creates challenge to the effective management of the town of Madison and creates a potential lack of separation of power between the executive and legislative bodies. As you know, it takes 75 people to establish a quorum, and if there's no quorum, those decisions are ceded to the Board of Selectmen. We talk about causes in each one. The next problem statement is continuity. There's a perceived challenge in executing mid and long-term plans. And we think that part of that is because of the 2-year term versus a 4-year term that many other towns do have. You might know that the Board of Finance has a 4-year term, as well as the police commissioners. So we're thinking that we have some opportunity to work there. Another problem statement, the 3rd one, is separation of powers, executive authority, and government oversight, public concern regarding the ethical decision-making and operation of town government. So if you take those 3 problem statements, we do have some considerations or solutions, and we've essentially found or came up with, discussed, debated 10 of them. And those 10 are included on page 13, where we talk about consider replacing the current form of government, the town meeting form of government, into something else. Could be an RTM. And again, because we don't have quorums, the decision making is ceded totally to the Board of Selectmen. Just a quick comment there. As I was doing these many interviews, something struck me, and it was a town employee who said, we were talking about this, and the town employee said, Bob, the electorate in Madison elected these folks, the Board of Selectmen, to make those decisions. And as obvious as that sounds, it struck me funny that, hey, you're right. So if the electorate wants the Board of Selectmen to make all these decisions, I guess it's working, but it really isn't working if you really want a participative government. Number 2, consider increasing the number of selectmen on the board to ensure proper representation of town residents and make sure there's fair debate on all issues. Number 3, consider amending the charter to eliminate reference to specific political parties. I've heard that a few different times in this process. I think it has merit. I also want to emphasize the desire to have the unaffiliated voter participate somehow maybe in a greater, the ease of participating, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Right now, it's pretty difficult for an unaffiliated resident or voter to participate unless they do get in a party. Having said that, there are unaffiliated voters on our committee. So there was an open way for people to get on this, to get on a committee, which I think is great. And it's a great start, great step. Another consideration we've came up with is establishing a town manager or town administrator, and to amend the charter accordingly. Right now, there's a charter, section 7.3, which does discuss a town administrator, but it doesn't really get that far in that document. It either needs to be struck or it needs to be amended somehow. Consider extending the term of the first select person to 4 years. Consider extending the term of all select persons to 4 years. Consider extending all elected positions to a staggered 4-year term. Consider increasing the number of selectmen. We talked about that to allow a deeper understanding of each select person on the various commissions and committees. Consider reviewing, number 6, consider reviewing all standing committees, boards, and commissions and establish clear roles, responsibilities, and reporting structures. And then consider establishing a role within the town government that is dedicated solely to communication, effective and efficient communication. The Everbridge idea, or the new software that Peggy discussed tonight, that's a great start to that. But clearly communication is one of the items that the electorate did discuss in the questionnaire. Consider updating our code of ethics and establishing an independent ethics review committee as needed. Number 9, consider eliminating the practice of seating the losing candidate for first select person on the board. We heard that loud and clear. And consider exploring possible alternatives to in-person voting or in-person government participation, including voting and meeting attendance. So we've found through COVID that Zoom works pretty well. It's not the best, but video conferencing is here to stay, I think. I know on other boards that I serve on, it'll always be there from now on. And voting by mail, different things like that are some great ideas for participation. So that's it in a nutshell. Before any questions, I do want to say, give acknowledgement to 2 people in particular. Lauren Rhines, she was fantastic in working with us, patient, professional, as I found all employees at the town level to be really, really great representatives of the town. I have been in town for about 26 years, and I don't have any other dealings with town employees at all, ever. But I got a lot of that over the last 4 or 5 months, and they were fantastic, every single one. Also, I'd like to thank Gus Horvath, who patiently worked with us on questions and submitted documents and did research for us. And his love of Madison knows no bounds, and all he wants is the effective and efficient operation of town government. And he is a treasure for and of the town. So thank you to those 2 people, as well as to thank you to all the people who served on our committee. We got to know each other pretty well. Sometimes it was kind of fun, and there a lot of work went into that as well. So, and thank you to Jean for getting on from one of the Carolinas. I can't remember which one. So I hope you don't have any. I hope you don't have any hurricanes headed your way. So, anything that we can answer for you at all?
Well, I guess one thing, once again, thank you, because it was very comprehensive in terms of all the research that went into this. And, you know, I will say I'm a little disappointed in the public participation of the survey. Obviously, you did have, I think, 130 generally respond to the survey, which is, you know, better than other surveys we've had. But it is hard to make a lot of strong conclusions out of that survey. It's not statistically valid, obviously.
No.
And so a question I do have is, would you recommend that the town undertake a more professional survey in this area? Do you think that would help drive a lot? Because I know that you didn't come to any strong recommendations. You kind of gave some guidance and ideas and areas to think about, but and I know that you were balancing different views of your committee, right? So what information would committee members need to feel that they would be able to make a strong recommendation?
That's a great question. I do think you need a professional entity who does this for a living every day to do a pretty comprehensive questionnaire. I do get the sense that the Charter Revision Committee, whoever might be on that, and whatever conclusions they come up with, I think they're going to want to temper and mute how much can get done at a referendum for change. From what I've read over time in the last 20 years in Madison, and what has actually been on the referendum and what has actually gotten approved, it's a little disappointing from the person who wants some change. So it's difficult, I think, for people to accept. I think when change comes around, I get the sense that people think they might have their rights diminished or their voices diminished, and no one wants that ever. But I think if you're going to do something, you couldn't take this document and go to a referendum with it by any stretch. Even if you turned it into recommendations versus solutions or ideas to solve the problems that we found, which was our intent, it would be voted down, I think, pretty easily, just because of the enormous amount of data. So I think if you move forward, I think you've got to pick your fight really, really well, understand it, educate everyone, educate the electorate, and then go to and recommend whatever change to the public. I think the more you add to it, the less likely it will get approved at a referendum, unfortunately. That's a long-winded answer, sorry.
Well, I guess, the last charter review was a very long process, and the changes were important changes. Some of them are just things that have to be cleaned up. Let's face it, there's some basic issues and the outdatedness of our charter, right? I mean, just how we conduct meetings. There's a lot of things we've learned in the last year, particularly the last 6 months, about how we need to update how our government functions. So I think there's kind of the clean up the language, clean up some of the problems. So there's that piece that practically has to get done because there's just downright mistakes in part of the charter. But then there's also the big picture thing, right? Which is more about our form of government. And I would hate to see if people have an issue with a form of government, but somehow we can't get this stuff cleaned up, And I wonder if there's going to be a way that we can at least.
You could do two. You could do it twice. You could do one question or one change in the referendum for cleaning things up, and then if the things you really want changed, it's another question on the ballot.
Okay.
So. Yeah, that's
to try to.
We've all seen that before. Yeah, so kind of bifurcated, I guess.
And then in terms of, I guess from your committee, do you feel that if you had more time and some resources behind you, because I know it's just been all volunteer work and you've been doing all your resources or all your own research, do you feel like you could narrow down those recommendations?
Let's hear from the committee. What is anybody's? I mean, we could keep on going with this document, and at some point you just got to say, let's end the madness here, and let's get some solutions to these folks. But I'm open to hearing what the committee says too. Anybody at all?
I thought it was interesting that if I read that correctly, the majority of the committee did not feel that the town manager was the way to go. I'd love to hear some more. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I personally would like a town manager. I've said it publicly before. I'll say it again. I think a town manager is the way to go. I think it's professional. I think it adds professionalism to the town. I like when I heard about, when I interviewed the other towns, how improved in the efficiency they were. I just get the sense that a lot of folks don't want to pay for it, and they think that a town manager takes away their representation. And I completely disagree with that, but others have other opinions, so you can hear
So
them.
I think the town manager is the best example of some of the solutions we came up with to represent why we did not come in with a conclusive recommendation. Primarily, there's 6 of us, well, 6.5 because Jean left halfway. And we could all agree in general directions, but we didn't feel it was, when we could get 100 people to give us some input on a survey, which was okay. But we didn't feel it was appropriate for us 6 individuals to say, this is what we should do, without having the ability to start to shape that recommendation and opinion by asking more people. So if you wanted real recommendations, we need more time and some kind of resource to allow us to go out and talk to people. So multiple surveys. I'm not sure how you can get people to participate. One of the resounding things that came out is people just don't want to participate, or they have many reasons why they don't. But I think that's just it. We didn't feel that it was appropriate, because town manager, I started out with yes. I ended up with maybe, but I don't have the data to say whether it's going to be a benefit or not. I don't know how much it really cost. I don't know how it would be managed. There was concern about it being separated from the voters. So how do you manage how is that person report back to and responsible to the voters of the town? All those questions were unanswered. So you really can't form an opinion, I think, as to whether it's a good or bad thing. It's a possible solution to a number of issues we found. The alternate solution they came up was a 4-year term for the first select person, so that they can end up having that learning more about what's going on and just have the continuity going forward and keep that midterm plan alive instead of every 2 years turning that over. Right. So multiple ways of solving the same problem. And once we started getting to that one debate, we spent an entire hour talking about town manager and came to no solution. We just had more questions. So I think to get to any of these ideas, getting down to this is the best way forward, takes a lot more work.
Peter Roos here. I also think the town manager runs to the executive side of government, but we all had real concerns about the legislative side as well, and that would be the participation of the populace. It's just not there. So if I had, what could I solve first and foremost? I would try to get more involvement from the people in the town before I solve the town manager issue, because in my mind, the government does run pretty well in town right now, but what it lacks is people being involved. And so I would be much more of an advocate personally of an RTM type of structure where that holds the executive branch more accountable as well. But at least then you've got more participation. It may not be broad-based participation, but if you had 50 people in an RTM, that's a lot more than you're getting now. You're going to get a lot more sound bites and thoughts from people. So it kind of depends on what your poison is, to tell you the truth. Town manager solves the executive side, but the legislative side is something that's still wide open and needs to be discussed.
Peter, were there thoughts and ideas about getting the public more involved?
Well, we talked about it, but one of the things, I guess, I just wonder if there isn't built-in apathy.
I think there's probably some of that.
You know, you look at our various, every May we vote on a budget, and you might get 11 to 15% of the populace voting for it. That can mean they basically tend to agree. It could also mean they don't have the time. It's hard to say. I would really love to drill down, because we did talk to I did not, but several of our committee did, to 4 or 5 towns that actually have the RTM. And it sure does sound like there's much more involvement on the legislative side. Yeah. So I think it's just something to consider.
But is it more involvement in those extra 50 people, or is it a more general citizen-based involvement?
Well, I guess if you elect 50 people, you hopefully get the citizens to elect them, and maybe you're going to Bruce Wilson's neighborhood, for example, and you're electing an RTM from Bruce's neighborhood. You are likely to get more interest in that than you might be any other way. Where you go to Aaron's neighborhood, same thing. You get people that you all circulate with in your parts of town, and you get a representative to come to town. That actually may be compelling.
Yeah, I think the same way.
We do too.
They're just
And you
both
could have a
involved.
town manager and an RTM at the same time.
Good, absolutely you could.
Can I also bring up a couple of points? Is that one of the things that was discussed throughout the committee, and I think Bruce Wilson, it kind of resonates with you because you brought it up during our telephone interview with you, that a lot of people follow what's going on, but they're pretty happy with it, and they pretty much don't come out unless they're unhappy with something. So there's a sort of a vote of confidence by acclamation or by even lack of participation. However, that being said, the dynamics of the way society communicates nowadays is changing rapidly. And we have Facebook out there, and I'll tell you what, I'm on there, but I don't use it that much because it becomes so caustic and is so filled with misinformation and misinformed counterpoints and things like that, that I don't know that the social media is the best way to get the information out and inform people. Our town website, for instance, it's a little bit cumbersome. You really have to dig deep to find what's going on in town. The paper, you get the headlines, how many people dig deep into all the pages of the paper. So hence number 7 in our considerations rather, the concept of a communications official to, I think this, the new communications forum that Peggy had mentioned earlier and introduced, that I think that's a step in the right direction because it kind of brings everything to a focal point. But getting back to the original point that I think, really resonated with me when Bruce brought it up, that sometimes lack of participation is participation because people are just generally happy with it. They're just not coming out because they're generally happy with the direction. So to change away from a truly representative government just for the sake of change, I don't know what that's going to fix other than a 4-year term, speaking to the issues of continuity of leadership, but to remove the representation and the participation of your involvement by the people to select their leaders, I think you're going to drive that into less involvement, not more, by virtue of this constant topic of the town manager. I don't see what that is going to fix. So I have to bring that up because I think it's very important, because at any given point, the town manager will be appointed by a majority party, and it's sort of like getting to be able to pick who your leaders are. The party gets to pick as opposed to the people. So I'm one of those people who is not in lockstep with the town manager position, and I think so. I would prefer to start with at least a 4-year term for this first selectman for continuity, and improve our communication with the people. So that's my points.
I've always wondered this. Madison has a very high degree of college educated people. And as a public policy major in college myself, I always equated education as a higher, with a more open-minded population who would, vote, who would participate, who would understand how important it is. And I just can't figure out how come we don't get much more participation, even in general election. I know this one's going to be pretty good coming up, so no worries there. But even for the referendums or the budgets, we've had 2 quorums in the last 10 years, I've been told. So clearly it's not that town meeting form of government really isn't working. So town's running great, don't get me wrong, but if we're kidding ourselves if we think we have a a town government that's functioning with a participative electorate. So.
I think that obviously it's a lot of things to debate, right, and to discuss. And I think one of the reasons we set up this committee was so that when we do go to charter review, it's a very targeted, focused effort, rather than, you know, thinking about models of government, thinking about ways to improve. It was, at least my vision was, we have kind of, here are your marching orders. We want to go in this direction. Now you focus on the legal document to get us there. Rather than having the Charter Review Commission come up with the idea was to hand them the roadmap so that they could go through and develop the document that we could take to the public for their vote. And so I guess I'm thinking that, you know, there's an opportunity to continue your work a little bit longer and get you more resources so that you could drill down in some of these areas. And I don't know if the board feels differently, because I feel like if we were just kind of stop your work, I don't think we have, the charter review is just going to go through the same exercise you've done, right? It's going to take your stuff and maybe take it a step further. But I guess I would prefer, and this is just my own personal opinion, is that if we could, you guys could figure out what resources would help you kind of drill down a little bit more to come up with that roadmap of direction, that would be preferable. And then we hand that off to the Charter Review Commission that focuses on the document itself. I don't know if the board has any, other people have any different views on that.
So the only concern I have with that strategy is that the Charter Review Commission, by state statute, really is free to consider anything they want. I think we can, as a board, give them some direction of the things that are concerning us. But once they are reviewing the charter, they're free to explore and make recommendations on any particular aspect of it that they think is important. And of course, the check to that is that it has to come back to the Board of Selectmen for approval. So they're not an unchecked free range commission. There are checks and balances in the process, but they can't effectively be limited in the scope of the work they do. So giving them some directional guidance, I think, helps, but doing that and thinking that that's all they're going to do is probably not realistic.
No, I mean, but I think that there's also a prescribed timeline that they have to follow. It's a much more regimented process, right? And so it helps them be more efficient if they have, I think, a lot of good data and a lot of thought, you know, that helps them weave through all the different options. And some of the things that, you know, we've talked a lot about town manager tonight, but my understanding is the previous charter review didn't require a town manager. It just offered the opportunity if the town wanted to take that direction to do that. And so by having at least the door open, we, you know, the charter review committee could go through and make similar recommendations as before, that, you know, it leaves that door open. So, you know, 3 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever, rather than having to go through an entire charter review, you have the path to get you to the town manager if it's at that time the appropriate decision that the electorate feels is right and that the town leaders feel is right. And I know that was my understanding, at least of the last review, that it created a door opening for it without prescribing it, right? So you know, I guess you know, is your thought, Bruce, that we should just move on to step 2 and go right to charter review?
So yeah, actually, I think we probably could go to charter review. But I think there's a lot in this document that we can explore further outside of a charter review commission, right? So the issue of communications is something that we've all talked about for as long as I've been involved in town government, right? Voter engagement and communications. And that doesn't require charter work for us to work on and explore. One of the questions I had was that you noted a disconnect between the multiple choice questions and the free form questions around communications, and I was wondering if the committee had any discussion around that disconnect.
Well, it wasn't statistically meaningful to start with. So, rather than just ignore the questionnaire, we thought that directionally, those things were important, but it didn't, because those things collided with each other and were at different opposite ends. Either maybe the questions were interpreted incorrectly, or when people have the ability to, you should see some of the free form things that are on there had nothing to do with government in many instances. So, people were using it as just a sounding board or a way to communicate, actually. So I don't think it's statistically valid, Bruce, to be honest with you. But I do think people have some questions on communications. I think that the town communicates pretty effectively, and I do think it's easy to navigate the website. I was on it today, and it says, click here for minutes, click here for this, click here for that. It's kind of a no-brainer. So I think it's pretty easy to navigate. So, but it always can be improved, that's for sure. So
I agree, and yet we have, and this isn't new, right? We've got this perception in the community that the town government's hard to access.
Right.
And
fact, I wrote up I did the summary of the survey, and I think we did not have a chance to discuss it in depth
deeply,
that disconnect. And the way I see it is answering a question from 1 to 5 on a multiple choice question. If you're happy, you pick the positive result. Yeah, everything's fine. I know what's going on. The free form text, the free text section is when you actually start typing what you think and what you feel. And I think if you get a disconnect between someone saying communication is fine because I like the way things are going, versus they're saying something, and it wasn't that people said communication is bad. I just interpreted different things they were saying as, this falls into the communication bucket. I don't know this is going on. I wish I knew more about this. It's best case trying to figure out what bucket to put it in.
Right.
And in that, those free texts were only a few that, a couple of the things that really came out. One was communication. I thought it was interesting that when asked, do you feel like you're being communicated with well by the town? The answer is yes, but then there's a conflict. And for me, I think the town website, anyone on this designed it, I apologize, is terrible. It is archaic design. It doesn't flow. It's not intuitive. And I deal with websites all the time. It's bad. And I think the communication, if you all did one thing, hire someone to make communication better between the town and the government.
Well, I think that, one of the things that we tackled early on this year was that we needed a communication strategy. And that's where we have started to lay out an actual communications plan. And we have a team in town hall working on this actively now because of this disconnect. Because there's a lot of information on the website, but it's just really hard to find it. And the other thing that I've learned, and I'm not sure when you did your survey, but what I learned starting in March is people love to get spoon-fed information pushed to them. We're in a push society now.
Yes.
And the website is a static location that you have to go to, right? You have to know to go to it. And so the ability to reach out to 13,000 phones through the emergency alert system is incredible, right? Because now you have this opportunity to contact people directly and give them information quickly. They don't have to do any work. And so I heard from so many in the community, they love to get the updates because it was easy. They just listened to it, put it on while they're making dinner, they knew everything that was going on in town. And that's where we started saying, okay, we really need to find a way to do this outside of an emergency situation and make it more part of our regular communication strategy. So, and that's where we kind of found our way to Everbridge. And these are kind of operational things. And so, that we wouldn't need, your committee to recommend, but I think it highlights that, look at how many, the people that participated in the survey were probably people that got tied in through the email distribution that we have through our town website, which only has like 900 or maybe it's 1,000 subscribers, right? So you've already narrowed down so significantly who you're reaching. These are people already that have said, I want to get news from the town, right? So you're not getting all those other people who just, it's not top of mind for them. And so I'm hopeful that by improving communications, we might actually get more participation. And so that might help us. I think there's a lot of issues with the town meeting structure and what hurdles we have to go through to get things accomplished. And I'm looking at this as a operating person now, not as a political person, just practical ways to run town government. Town meeting is not efficient. And maybe that's tweaking the dollar threshold, what you have to go to town meeting to do to make changes. I mean, that might be the recommendation that might come out of it versus actually getting away from a town meeting form of government. But so I think there's a lot of things to think about still.
Yeah.
And I guess I still come across, and I hear what you're saying, Bruce, is that charter review has the ability to explore and do a lot of things that this committee is, but I think that part of what, will make that a more efficient and clean process would be to have as much data and input and information and a roadmap, so to speak, from this group. The more detailed and direction oriented you can get them, the charter review then can kind of do their job efficiently. So
can I jump in for a second?
Yeah.
So I agree with you, Peggy. Bruce, I guess I sort of disagree in the sense that I guess this committee should continue to listen to the public and to drive towards some tangible recommendations that could lead into a constructive conversation in the charter review. I feel like we're sort of scratching the surface. We've got some great ideas, but I don't think we're formalizing the recommendations. And I think, given some additional public input, maybe some resources that we might put against this, I just think there's some power to really driving a constructive, deliberative, document-focused charter review. And that's really what that conversation is. That conversation is let's peel back and let's look at 21.1. I mean, Gene, you've done it 100 times, right? I mean, let's look at the document. Let's look at how the charter is constructed, and let's figure out the wording. But unless we have the themes, the sort of the power of what the people are telling us, I think we're only scratching the surface. So I think it's really important to drive to some more tangible recommendations that then the charter review can leverage. So that would be my thought.
I'd like to jump in. I think this committee now represents a wonderful asset of this town. We have 7 individuals who are deeply brewed in this process, and I hate to give up on this asset. I'm feeling that it's time to ask this committee to move from findings to recommendations. That is to say, I would like to see this committee evolve and sharpen the knowledge that you've picked up so far. I realize this is not a committee that's ever going to be unanimous about anything. These are very subjective issues, but I think we're almost there. And I would like to see the public get some very specific recommendations from this committee. I'd like to see the public reaction to that before we launch a regimented charter review process. So my 2 cents is you're getting close, but we're not quite to the finish line yet. I want to provide time and resources so that you can evolve and sharpen what you've learned so far.
Could I add something? I agree with you, Al. I think that we went from considering our charge as being, we had to come up with specific recommendations, to going through the whole process and finding out that there's many, many tentacles. You can go many, many ways. And I think that the survey that we did, while it was certainly was not scientific, did open our eyes to a lot of things. And I think one of the things that we talked about when I was involved, and again, I have been, excuse me, but I've been out of the loop for at least a month, having moved. But, you know, without having a real scientific survey to really delve into some of these issues, it kind of leaves us as being, well, we can sort of see this is the way people are going. This is kind of the way things are. Some people want this, some people want that. This works, this doesn't work. But, you know, either this committee is done and it hands the findings over to the Charter Review Commission, which then has a lot of other issues to deal with, or it continues on into phase 2 and, you know, is given the resources to do a lot more work. I mean, that's just, you know, right now our charter says, yes, we could hire it isn't a town manager, it's a town administrator. Having been on that, you know, on that Charter Review Commission, we couldn't go that far. So we settled for a town administrator, which is totally different than a town manager. And it was kind of like a little stopgap if things got, you know, if all of a sudden we decided we needed somebody professional. But that certainly is not a town manager, which is, you know, a totally different step. So, I mean, I can't speak because I'm no longer a resident. Unfortunately, I still feel I have a, you know, a long time affiliation, but I would think that this committee could take it to the next step, if whether it's the same people or other people, in order to turn this over. I mean, time is ticking, but on the other hand, it's time to do it right. So that's just,
Amen.
that's just my 2
We
cents.
miss you, Gene, by the way. We miss
I
you.
miss you guys too.
When does this have to go to the public to be voted on, the charter review itself? Is that next fall, next November?
It's whenever we
It
set
actually-
the calendar.
Yeah, it's whenever we set the calendar.
We fire the starting gun, and that starts a clock on the committee. And that clock isn't dependent on any other cycle except for when we formally charge them.
Would you typically want it voted on in November, though? Is that typical?
I asked Lauren about this. I said, if we were to go forward with the charter review, could we even get it on the ballot for November 2021? And she said that would be pushing it, right, Lauren? If you look
That's
at all
really
the
where I'm
steps.
headed.
Yeah. So even if we were to, you know, try to get it on that ballot, it'd be really hard to do if we went right into it now.
It's about the
She said it'd be
setback
tight.
dates, right? That's the issue.
Yeah. So all these different public hearings that have to happen. That doesn't mean we can vote on it in January. We can vote on it in May. We can, you know, we can pick if we wanted to have a standalone referendum on it, or we want to combine it with some other referendum. We want to put it on the budget referendum. So there'll be a lot of other choices. If we, you know, and it looks like we probably couldn't make November 2021 anyway. So I guess I would argue we wouldn't want the timetable to drive us, you know, to quickly, because we've been through this and had it fail. Was that 4 years ago?
15.
15, right?
Was it 15? Oh, I was 5. Yeah, 5 years ago.
It was 13.
So,
Wasn't it 13?
No, it was 15.
15.
15.
I'm sure Gus will send us an email tomorrow morning, so we'll have a detailed something.
Well, I just have one suggestion. I think Aaron and Al, who created this committee, should go back and re-solicit everyone's interest.
Yeah.
Separately.
When you talk about additional resources, are you talking about actually having this committee spend money? I mean, I personally think that would be a waste of taxpayer dollars, big time.
Well, I was kind of wondering, Lauren, just to piggyback on that question is, and not to put everyone on the spot, but what do you feel I mean, you met 25 times. You produced a great amount of information here. It sounds like one area where you wish you had more input or more data was from the public. Other than that, is there other information that you could say you wish you had gotten to, or you wish, is there some piece of data that you're missing that you feel like is critical to this analysis? And then I guess the second question is, do you believe that that missing piece of public opinion can actually be obtained? And Lauren, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but this is your background, right? Polling opinion.
I mean, I guess I sort of, I still don't, it's still not clear to me what is really truly broken here. And that's, there's some people, the chairman of the committee wants a town manager. I don't agree with that. I think that the committee spent 6 months and couldn't produce any hard data to justify a town manager. There's no data on, do towns with town managers have a better credit rating, or do those towns have, higher or lower taxes? There's actually, there's no evidence to me that having a town manager would improve participation in town. In fact, it seems, in theory, that it would actually reduce participation because you're removing the, you're replacing, I think, the voice of the people with a government employee. So I just don't think that this, if this committee couldn't come up with a recommendation for that it agreed on unanimously over the past 6 months, I don't see what it's going to do with more time or money. So that's just where I come down on this.
Yeah,
Aaron,
I
to answer
guess-
your question. Oh, go ahead, Peter.
I was just going to say quickly, I actually agree with Lauren. I mean, I think we've done about as much as we can. And if you're ready to go to a charter review commission, you should do it. And if they want to, though, then get public opinion with a better survey, they can certainly do that. But I think maybe it's time for fresh blood to move forward on the charter review commission.
Yeah. And Aaron, that piece of data that we're missing, where we didn't solely focus on a town manager. If the charge was to go research a town manager, we would have had all the things that might be missing. We would have done a lot more research, but there are 10 things and 24 other interviews. We didn't solely focus on a town manager. That wasn't it. The word got out that we were talking about it, and it got a lot of support internally in the town employees ranks because they seem to be for it. So that bubbled up by itself. If again, we focused on a bunch of different things. We talked about a lot of other things. It was a disparate set of ideas that were coming out. We talked about the RTM more than the town manager, I think, or maybe just as much. So to just solely focus on the town manager is just not what our document or our intent was, and nor should it be conceived as such, so, or perceived as such.
Also bear in mind that we didn't, given the pandemic, we got cut off very, very early doing any really meaningful interviews with other towns. So, that's something that was lacking in this. I mean, we interviewed Bob, we interviewed some town managers and other forms of government like ours, but we weren't able to really do any outreach that we expected to do. So that was a bit of an issue for us.
Yeah, some towns wouldn't even call Lauren back. So, we were supposed to go see a few other towns that were directed by other towns to, hey, they got a great charter, you should go talk to them. And some of them wouldn't even return her calls. So, and understandably so, they're in the middle of a pandemic, trying to manage their
Yeah,
own.
So I lost track of who asked the question, but I think I remember the basic of the question. I agree and disagree with what's been said. I think there's more we can do.
Sure.
I think as a committee, we never really had a robust debate on any of these recommendations. The closest we came was on the town manager one. And we realized that we didn't allow enough time to come to a conclusion on that. But I personally think, and I'm game for it, that I think if we got a couple of people just to sit down and talk about one of these and try to boil it down to saying, should we or should we not do this? And I think the recommendations are good, but the key to what our findings were that there were, in my view, there were basically 4 things we found, which is communication is not good enough to get people involved. That leads to some of the apathy, and it's not even apathy, it's just a lack of knowledge. I've been here 3 years, and until I joined this committee, I didn't realize I was supposed to go to a town meeting to vote on legislation. I also didn't realize that if I have 75 friends, I can run the government. So while the government runs well and Madison runs well, the government is not working as designed, so it's broken. It should be redesigned. Different paths you can go down that road. You don't need a new form of government. You just might need a couple of tweaks to what we have now, but it's not working as designed, so therefore it's broken. That's just a simple definition for me. There's a lot of, when you're looking at how people feel disenfranchised from participating, the town is run by 2 political parties and no one else. And if you're not part of that, no one seems to know how to get involved in the town. There is a process, but it's somewhat, no one knew about it till Lauren told us about it. So again, that's part of that communication. The continuity just isn't there. And I can see it just in a short time. I'm here, all these problems keep coming up. And it's something that should have been solved 5-10 years ago, but it's still here because no one's in charge long enough to solve it. And that's it. Those are my 4. But I think if we sat down and so let's just figure out what the town government should look like so that it works, and spent a couple of days on that, we could probably figure it out and come with a recommendation. And if not 1, maybe 2, I would say either one of these could work. I think the town manager one comes down to, it's gonna be one of 2 things that are gonna make the continuity thing work. A town manager or some other way of giving everyone involved more time to get things done. You're talking about 4-year terms that are staggered. We can do that.
So I have 3 big,
beat each other up on it. And that's we had one meeting where we beat each other up and it was great.
I have
What was the
3 big
charge?
features.
Loved it.
Welcome to
Creative
our-
destruction is awesome.
I'm just interested so Bob Polito, but what was the charge? Was the charge to come up with recommendations? Do we have the charge somewhere?
Yeah.
In the
Andy?
materials.
Yeah, it's in your document. And
Consider different
yeah,
forms of government permissible under state statute and make recommendations for possible changes to Madison's government structure and/or charter.
Recommendations, but the word is recommendations.
right. And we interpreted that as something more akin to providing solutions to the problems that we found versus recommendations. We really thought it was the Charter Revision Committee to give you the recommendations versus us, quite frankly. So, you get a bunch of people who really don't have a lot of experience in doing this, and then you're gonna work for 4 or 5 months on this. We thought that we would give the Charter Revision Committee a path, at least some guidance, and the Charter Revision Committee could throw this all away because they should be able to clear their own path with what they feel should be the changes and recommendations. So we looked at it a little differently than what the actual charge says in recommendations. But we think we provided a pretty decent document to move forward with the Charter Revision Committee, so they could start, with wheels down right as soon as they form. So. And they do need a budget. You're going to have to go with a public questionnaire. You're going to need a professional firm to do that. And you're going to really have to knock on doors to get that opinion.
I'm going to hold your feet to the fire though, Bob, but I've sort of heard you say we need more time, but we decided to
no.
change the charge. So do you think we need more time?
No, I think, I personally think this committee has finished their document and, you know, ready to submit it to the Charter Revision Committee, quite frankly.
I have three big takeaways, and I just would like to say them and then let the committee members correct me if you think I've misunderstood it. First is this notion of limited elected participation by unaffiliated voters, right? We're really governed by a two-party system. Effectively, yes, there are ways for people to petition their way onto ballots, but it's difficult and it's not readily apparent. And I think that's something that we can begin looking at as a board outside of a charter review commission. How do we open up our universe of potential elected volunteers to the unaffiliated majority, which is quite frankly the majority of residents in town. The second takeaway is around the town meeting form of government. Now, Rob, I don't know that I would characterize the form of government as being broken and not functioning properly. We have most of our town meetings are set up around special appropriations, so they're fiscal decisions. The charter is set up to make it very cumbersome to spend money. I'm personally a big fan of making it difficult to spend taxpayer money. So I don't object to the $50,000 threshold. But in the recent years, we've had a lot fewer town meetings because we've had a lot fewer special appropriations because our budgeting has gotten a lot tighter. And I wonder if we can explore as a board the triggers for the town meeting outside of the big ones, which are our elections and our budget referendum, right? Because mechanically, our budget referendum is a town meeting that has been adjourned to a ballot process. So all of our budget referendums begin with a town meeting that is then adjourned. So it's technical, but that is what it is. The third is this issue of communication and renewing our quest for the pot of gold under the communication rainbow, so to speak. What can we do to more creatively reach out to residents of the town? And you know, Peggy has got this new product that she's about to unveil, which I think is fabulous. Maybe we need to look again at all the different social media platforms in a push world. Maybe we need to have a specific presence on all of those. It still would require people to like us or subscribe to us or whatever it is they have to do on all these different social media. But at least if we're availing ourselves of everything out there, when somebody says, I don't know what's going on, we can say, well, all you have to do is turn on your phone or you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
So for me, those are three big takeaways.
So I agree with almost everything you said there. Actually, I agree with all three things. The communication, as an example, I don't use Facebook for all the reasons said before. I created a Facebook account so I could try to figure out what's going on. And I think I came up with 8 different Madison, Connecticut Facebook pages. And after joining all of them, I finally found the one that's semi-official Town of Madison. I had to get rid of a few because they were just mean people.
They are mean.
Then the town meeting as a trigger, I think that's actually one of the better solutions we could follow to revise the government. I do disagree, though, that when you say the town meeting, the spirit of the town meeting is that everyone's supposed to get together and talk about the issues and then vote. And that's not operationally even feasible because it's required that people get together. And where are you going to put 13,000 people if we all decide to show up? So we bet And then I know it's a technicality on how you get to a referendum, but it's still not the spirit of the town meeting form of government. So in my mind, I'm just an engineer and it's not meeting specs. And so if it's not meeting specs, it has to be redesigned. And so I don't think it's not working. It's just not working the way the charter says it's supposed to. But your example of a trigger, that's exactly what I was thinking. Just make it a higher level. Like you need to get people involved and eliminate the need for in-person, make some kind of virtual attendance, and you can move forward very quickly with this, with very minimal changes.
I mean,
I'm not
think
thinking of
there's-
all the other problems associated with that, which is why we can't really recommend that without a lot of more debate and
Right.
conversation.
Well, and that's where I think, we're getting into a lot of the specifics, because you kind of have to say, okay, what is the right form? And then how do we make that form the most effective and successful, right? Set it up for success rather than failure. And I feel a little bit, change is hard and it takes a long time to do anything in government is what I'm learning. And I find that sometimes we don't make good decisions because it's so hard to accomplish those things in government. So we end up with apathy or lack of innovation or lack of change and lack of progress because it's so hard to move things forward, I think. I think that there are a lot of different ways that we, can explore. It sounds like your board has kind of scratched the surface, as you said. I'm also not, though, advocating we keep a committee together that doesn't feel that they can, come to a conclusion and make those recommendations. And it sounds like that's, Bob, is what you're saying, and many people on the committee right now feel that extending your charge may not result in any difference in terms of making a stronger, more detailed recommendation to the board.
I don't believe so. At this point, I don't.
Okay.
And I just want to voice that I disagree.
Yeah.
I think you can.
It's okay.
That's all.
And I think a lot of these questions still need to get answered.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question is, does it stay in your committee, or do we then just decide, let's go to the charter review and we do it all in the charter review and we have a broader charter review process, which I know there were some comments made about spending money and surveys and things, but the reality is it's very expensive to go through a charter review process. I mean, there's legal bills, there's a referendum cost. So I guess I want to make sure that the decisions that are being made in this process is vetted with the public as much as possible to ensure success at the polls, so that we're presenting something that we feel the people are really going to support and accept.
Yeah.
Rather than just throwing something out there and hoping that people embrace it.
Peggy,
It should be designed for success.
Can I make a suggestion just in the spirit of trying to move us forward here? What if we tabled the conversation tonight? We thank this board for all their incredible work that they've done, which really was amazing. And we have another conversation at our next selectmen meeting to further the conversation and decide a course of action. But I feel like we're sort of going around in circles here a little bit.
No, I would agree with that. And that was my thought process, is that I think we need to think about it and then come back and revisit it. And, the choice really is extend this committee or go right to charter review.
Can I just jump in? Because I think, Scott Murphy brought up, his point of recommendation versus consideration. The recommendations, it's the wording in the charge that we're, I think, hung up on. However, this ad hoc government study committee is to consider different forms of government and pass that uphill with the findings that we have found, or findings that we come across. Ultimately, the recommendations will come from the charter review committee, go to the board for consideration to put on the referendum to be voted on by the people, because we don't want to, eliminate the vote of the people. So as far as, because I was in opposition to the recommendations as worded, as it was previously worded, because it was very specific and there was quite amount of disagreement on, for instance, the concept of the town manager. I came into this committee about 2/3 of the way through. And one thing that kind of jumped out at me is, and I brought this up very, very early on, is the concept of a town manager seemed to be a solution in search of a problem. And we were trying to justify it as opposed to it emerging as a solution to many of the problems that we found. And so the considerations are, if you note that there's a 4-year term consideration for the first select person, as is there is also a consideration to the town manager position. So that is information that we have collected, and to my other committee members who did a tremendous amount of work prior to my joining the committee, though. It was not a glaring solution as a town manager, or even the 4-year addition. There were problems identified, and I think they were thoroughly considered, but there's not a glaring resolve to the solution. So I think the difference between it being a recommendation and a consideration, I think we're passing up viable information to the Charter Review Committee, who will then make the formal recommendation to the board for consideration of turning it into a referendum.
Well, I think that, Bob, I think that was, I get the trying to clarify, what is meant by a recommendation, right? And I think that doesn't change, though. I think Scott's recommendation is that our board needs to take action in some ways, right? We either extend your charge or we don't, and then we go to the next phase, which is what we talked about at the beginning in January of going to the Charter Review Commission, in which case we then have to actually formally move that forward. So I think that it sounds like there's a preference not to move forward the committee, but not everybody's in agreement to that. And I think it's been a robust discussion, and I think Scott's point is a good one. Let's revisit this the next meeting where we can actually make a formal decision. Our next meeting's in September 14th, is it, Lauren? Yeah. So, and then we can just decide what we're going to do moving forward, whether it's charter review or whether it's extending this and providing maybe some guidance on where we feel that you can get additional information and whether there should be other, financial resources provided to your committee. So I think that if that sounds reasonable to your committee, you just got to hang out a few more weeks.
Speaking for me, sure.
Yeah.
I remember there was discussion about this, but can members of this committee serve on the charter review?
Yes.
Okay. So for those interested, like Bob.
Yeah, I think if selected, absolutely, right?
Can continue on.
Yeah.
Did the committee come to a conclusion as to whether or not statutes or the town charter would allow for members for us to eliminate political parties on the Board of Selectmen? Were you able to do?
I'm not sure of that, but you and I did discuss that when we talked 6 weeks ago.
Yeah. Well, because I know it's done in other towns, but in other states. So I don't know if it's
right. You were
structure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know other states don't do that, and that I think is illegal.
Yeah.
Question that we would have to ask.
Right.
Because just the way the whole ballot system is set up, there's a process to get on a ballot in Connecticut that involves a party or a separate petitioning, so.
That's why I think, it might be a state. I mean, I just think, yes, communication is one factor, but I tend to believe that the issue might be a desire to want to know. And I think people are just a little bit turned off by politics and I just wonder if we're focusing on communication. Yes, we need good communication, but what do we do to motivate people to want to know more and be involved? And that I think is the larger question.
Somebody froze.
So,
Oh, sorry, did I freeze up?
Yep.
I think
Oh.
everybody.
No, you're
So-
okay. I heard you.
My internet connection is unstable, so I will
No,
stop,
you sounded good.
stop talking.
So I guess then we would need, I guess, a motion to, well, this is just an update, right?
This is a
So actually, we don't
discussion.
even
Yeah,
need
we're
to do it.
good.
Yeah,
We're
there's
good.
no, we're
Next
good.
item.
So, all right, so to be continued. I think it was a really good discussion tonight.
Thank you
And,
all.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for your
meeting.
Great work.
and
Yeah,
thank
accepting-
you. Yep, it's a great
So
committee,
I-
great people on it. It really was, it was very enjoyable in most instances.
Okay, great. Thanks. And then we'll get back to you, Bob. We'll circle back about the next
Okay.
meeting and how we plan on kind of addressing this in the next meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay? All
Thank
right,
you.
Thanks a lot for
Thank
all
you.
your time and input.
Yep,
Thanks.
and thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So I don't remember what's on here. Where are we? We got a long ways to go.
We're on 7.
Jesus, okay. Well, it just shows you how difficult, you know, these issues are to deal with. I mean, it's an intellectual exercise, right? Okay, so moving on, the next item on the agenda is discuss and take action to award proclamations to the Vista 2020 graduation class. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. And then I got to read the proclamation, right? So let me, unfortunately, I didn't have anything printed out this time, so I'm going on my iPad here. Does somebody have the proclamation handy?
The list, you mean?
Well,
Just gotta read the
Oh,
proclamation.
yeah. If somebody else would like to read it, I'm trying to find it here, but everything I have is, I'm having to read off my iPad tonight, so my printer broke down. And it's kind of
So what I could do is I could just read one, and then we can just mention all the names like we've done in the past.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
a great idea, Bruce.
Let's do that.
All right. So whereas on Friday, August 21st, 2020, Vista Life Innovations held its 2020 graduation ceremony by live stream. And whereas the class of 2020 worked hard to learn the skills necessary to live independently. And whereas the students of the 2020 graduating class remained focused during these uncertain times. Good job. Now, therefore, we, the members of the Board of Selectmen of the town of Madison, hereby unanimously acknowledge the achievements of these folks done this 24th day of August 2020 in the town of Madison, Connecticut.
Okay.
Second.
All right, and I'll just read the names to the proclamations for 20 graduating class: Meredith Baber, Jonathan Yari, Guarin Wood, Nicholas Bayaki, Rebecca Kennelly, and Jeffrey Hall. And I apologize if I mispronounced any of those. So congratulations to this group. I know this is a very inspiring and demanding program, and it was excited that they could complete this work, especially during this challenging time dealing with this COVID and all the restrictions in place. So
no doubt.
Congratulations to them. All in favor of awarding the proclamation, say aye.
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 Okay, great. So I know we have some certificates that we will send on to Vista, and congratulations once again to those graduates. So, all right, moving on to item number 8, discuss and take action to approve the hiring of Francesca Esposito to the position of Parent Support Counselor located with Youth and Family Department upon successful completion of the drug screening and criminal background check. The position is non-exempt. Rate of pay is grade 8, step 1, $25.04 per hour. The position is budgeted, not requiring appropriation of funds.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. So discussion, this is just a position that was in the budget. We've had a lot of discussions about this position before. It has been approved for 2 years as a part-time position. It continued forward. This year's budget is a part-time position. And
So it's budgeted. We're good.
Yeah, we're good. So any other questions? No? Okay.
Nope.
All in favor of approving the hiring of Francesca Esposito, say aye.
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 Okay, great. All right. Welcome, Francesca, to Madison Youth and Family Services. Item number 9. So in this
I'll move
item,
I would say I'll move that we'll table this agenda item as requested by the Board of Ed, and congratulations to them on their recent award of a not insignificant amount of funds to help them in their efforts with COVID.
can I get a second for that?
Second.
Table it? Okay, great. Just discussion. I mean, we could do the vote to table, but I know that Katie, I think, has been waiting patiently in the wings and just wanted to give a quick update on just where things are from an expenditure standpoint with COVID-related expenditures. Is she, Lauren, is she still on the call, or is Stacy?
I'm here.
Okay, great.
Hi,
So why don't
everybody.
Hi.
you're hanging in there, boy. So,
I'm here. I believe Lauren Jean Ann is also.
And Stacy and Kirk Barnaby.
Yes,
oh,
thank
okay,
you.
Great. All right, great.
So we just, first of all, wanted to echo what Bruce said. This was a welcome surprise as we reopen the district in a couple weeks, or not even a couple weeks. Teachers start on Wednesday, and our students start a week from Thursday. We were thrilled on Friday, late Friday, to receive from the state a special appropriation for COVID relief funds of, Stacy, help me out, about
646,000.
Thank you. So that was a very welcome surprise. So it kind of negated our request to the board for a special appropriation to get started for the school year. I think it's important to just mention that this will help us pay our bills for the things that we're required to open. But there are several unknowns still to come. So the likelihood is that, there might be a further request down the road. And we're here, me, Stacy, and Jean Ann, and Kirk, who is our chair of the finance committee, to answer any questions that you might have. Yay, hearing none.
No, I have a question.
Scott, look at the time.
Oh, sorry, it's late.
Kidding.
Sorry, I won't go there if you don't want me to.
No, bring it.
No, I'm just interested in sort of the bigger picture here, relative to the costs that are been expended, and obviously the nice surprise of having this award from the state. Do we expect that award from the state to cover all our costs, or do we expect that it will be much broader than that? Do we not know yet? Kind of give us a sense of the landscape here.
So Stacy, I'm going to start, and I'm going to ask you and Jean Ann to fill in. But as Stacy said, we have expenditures already before the opening of school of totaling $515,000 that are already encumbered. They need to happen to ensure that we're ready to reopen next week. Purchased items like desk shields, PPE, webcams, things like that. We've tried to find dollars, the Board of Ed, within our existing budget wherever possible. And the building principals are all looking within their own line items to encumber or find money within our own budget. So I think, the district plans to, and that's why the special appropriation was there to begin with. We plan to return approximately $550,000 pending the audit to the town at the end of the 2019-2020 fiscal year. We always strive to return unexpended funds to the town each year. And because we closed in March, there was some savings to be had. So that's why it's a little bit larger than has been in the past. Yeah, so I think, you know, the short answer to your question, which is not short clearly, is that, you know, we there are still a fair amount of unknowns. We haven't started school yet. There are still some recommendations every day. The discussion changes and the recommendations change at the state level in terms of what we need to open. And when we open, obviously health and safety are paramount, and we will do whatever we can to make sure and ensure that our kids are healthy and safe in and or remotely.
I have a question, and you might not know this right now. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you have has the board figured out yet how many parents have elected not to send their kids back, and also how many are? I guess it doesn't matter if they're going to a private school, whether or not they're homeschooling or going to private school. But do you have any sense of what that number is? And I guess my second question is that going to result in any cost savings at all, or is it too hard to know that? Or
so I'm going to punt that, Jeannie Ann, to you. There was a survey, Erin, that went out to any parents who have kids in the district to assess, again, for planning purposes, to know whether or not kids will be fully remote, fully in person, or withdrawing from the district. So Jeannie Ann, I think you have those statistics that went out to parents in the district last week.
24 children have withdrawn from the district, but when you look K through 12, or even, you know, K-12, 24 students really, they're not in one cluster, they're not in one school, they're not in one grade, they're not in one classroom. So,
so I'm sorry, so you said withdrawn from the district. What about not withdrawn, but they're going to homeschool?
well, homeschooling is withdrawing from the district. When you,
Okay.
I think what you mean is remote learning. Is that what you mean?
So
when
they're
you're
not.
when you're homeschooling, you are you have to withdraw your child, and you're no longer with, and that child is.
Okay, I meant that literally. Like they're going to be home, so they're
Remote
still
learning.
enrolled. They're still enrolled, but they're not going to be physically present in the buildings.
Yes.
We call that distance learning.
Right, remote learning or distance learning. So it's roughly.
Whatever you call it. What would that number be? If you
it's roughly 10% of the respondents were doing that. We're planning to do that.
Okay.
But truthfully, it's very interesting. I want to try that, but then I may send my child. So it's like
people are going to change. People are going to change their minds.
Exactly. I think, if we get in and things are going well, and they see that things are going well, I'm sure that they will switch over to sending their children in. If things go the other way in terms of a higher infection rate, then obviously they'll be saying, I made the right decision.
Right. And how many people responded to the survey?
We're up to about, I would say, just under 90%.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Katie, maybe one of the things that you folks can do for us is set some sort of scheduling expectation. Once every 90 days, you can come to us and say, here are all the puts and takes, right? Here's the operational savings we've realized. Here's the operational increases we've realized. Here's the net. I would hate to burden you guys with every month.
Thank you.
And what you're going to do from a practical perspective is you're going to light item transfer money around for a while, and then you're going to recognize that needs to be, you need to have a correction in the form of a special appropriation. So I said every 3 months, but if you have a better schedule for that,
we can certainly talk to our finance committee, Bruce. I think that's reasonable. I want to be as transparent about this as possible. this is unfortunately, I think as Jean Ann just illustrated, a moving target. We will have families who begin in the hybrid model and decide to do distance learning. We will have parents who start in distance learning and transition to the hybrid model. And we may have parents withdraw or rejoin the district. So there's a fair amount. I also think there are some unknown things that we still have to look at as we move forward. Health and safety, as I said, are paramount in everything that we do. We will have kids learning in tents and outside with as much circulation as possible. So there may be added personnel required for safety purposes. So all of that kind of stuff is continuing to go, and I'm happy to come to your meetings, especially if you put me at the beginning of your agenda, as often as you like.
Well,
I mean that honestly. We don't want to spend any money that isn't unnecessary. But at the same time, this is unprecedented, and we want to make sure that we are educating the kids to the best of our ability, and at the same time, maintaining the highest levels of health and safety that we can.
I think that's a great idea. I know that you and Peggy and Jean get together frequently to talk about what's going on. You being here is just another public forum where you can get your message out. So
exactly. It was important for us to be here tonight. I wanted to make sure that we could answer any questions that the board might have. We are a partnership with the town. Peggy talked a little earlier about childcare and before and after school, and that is a town function. So we've been working in great partnership in that capacity, and we're happy to be provide as many updates or information as we possibly can.
No, and I do appreciate all that, Katie, because I think you guys have been really good at keeping, certainly me and Jean informed of all this, because it's a moving target, as we talked about. And I think the biggest question mark is, when you reevaluate hybrid learning, where are we going to be generally in the state? So there's a lot of unknown variables about what might happen this school year. And I think we just have to be constant communication and remain flexibility, right? But make sure that we have the resources available to make schools safe for kids. And I think you guys have been doing a great job. I don't know how you're going to do it all. And I'm eager to get my kids on that bus. But it's I know it's a huge challenge. So, and it's obviously the teachers ultimately that are going to be, boots on the ground delivering those services every day. So we're grateful for them.
Well, if anybody understands the challenges, Peggy, you've been living it. So I'm grateful for your ear and Jean Fitzgerald's partnership, and just working together. I mean, anybody who knows me knows I'm an over communicator to a fault. So feel free to contact the district or me or the reopening email line that's on our website with questions. It's challenging, but together I think we can do it successfully.
Has CIAC landed on a position with regards to fall sports?
Not as of this evening. We're waiting.
You had to go there, Bruce. You had to go there.
Well, the problem is this is just another dance that the district is having to do, right? They're relying on another authority to tell them what they've got and what they need to do, and which is going to create a reaction out of the district.
Yeah.
So the uncertainty from the state level isn't doing us any favors.
Today, they told us they would let us know by the end of the week.
And teachers start Wednesday.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Well, and it's not just the school district. There's a trickle-down effect, because all these sports programs tend to mirror what CIAC is doing, and then all the facilities in town are used by all the high school, athletic programs. So there's a lot at stake with some of these decisions.
A lot of dependencies.
Yeah. So So, you know, I know people reach out to me about this stuff, and Scott Erskine gets calls, and we're kind of like, you know, we're in wait mode too. So we hope that this can kind of get resolved soon and we can move on. So I think we're good on questions. And thanks for all the hard work once again. And I think we just need to vote on tabling, right? So all in favor of tabling the special appropriation, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, great.
Thank you all. I
all
will
right.
stay on for the solar unless you don't need me.
Oh my gosh, looks like she wants to leave.
I'm guessing that it would be a good idea for you to stay on with solar. But,
Okay. Okay.
Just because, I mean, it's
Will do.
obviously an initiative that your board is supportive of. And I apologize, I had you guys on screen sharing, so we didn't get to see everybody on the screen. I keep forgetting to take that off. But now I'm going to go back to the agenda.
Did we actually motion and second that last item? I don't think we actually did. We voted on it.
Yes, Scott, you did.
No.
Yes, Scott, you
You
did.
seconded it, Scott.
I did?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Very good.
And then we had discussion, and that was when we invited Katie and
Thank you.
and Stacey.
Was a long discussion.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you started the discussion.
I did.
With the question. So, all right. So the next item on the agenda is, this should be pretty quick. Hold on a second. Once again, I got to get into it. I'm never going to do this again, relying on my iPad for this stuff. I don't know how you do this, Bruce.
I'm never going back.
Well, it's such a pain to get different documents and stuff.
I got a
pile of paper. Pile of
Got a program for you.
Okay. All right. That's what I need. Okay. Item number 10 is discuss and take action to approve this, or no. Yes, to approve a special appropriation request from the Public Works Department in the amount of $24,481.98 to replace a 2008 Ford Escape hybrid SUV. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second? Okay, discussion. So who's on here for this one? Just real quickly, this is another vehicle. And I just want to say this is our fourth vehicle since March, where it was over 10 years old and either the engine blew up or something happened to it. We are in the process, actually, we just signed the document to get a fleet review for all our cars. This was on the horizon, and because I think we've recognized that kind of how we were planning for vehicle replacement cycles was not working, because this is the fourth one we've had this year. So
was this a blown engine? Was this an engine that went bad?
yeah, this one is, didn't the engine blow up on the side of the highway or something? I don't remember the whole story.
Peggy, I'm here.
Oh, you are, Jonas. Okay,
Yes,
great.
Johnny Yanaka. You can hear me then. Okay. So yeah, this is, as you said, it's a 2008, it's 12 years old, had approximately 145,000 miles, and apparently it sustained severe engine damage somehow, and it was looked at by the town mechanics, and it was also looked at by the Ford dealership, and it just was not feasible to repair. It's really overdue for replacement. Whoop.
We can still hear you. There you are. You're back.
Okay.
So who's maintaining these cars?
The town mechanics are maintaining the cars, or they're sent to the dealer if it's something that is out of our capability.
Are our town mechanics ASE mechanics?
I don't believe they are certified. They've been with the town for many years. They have a lot of experience, but I don't believe they are certified.
I think that's something that when we do this fleet study to talk about, maintenance cycles, who should be handling the repairs, all that's going to be reviewed through the study.
I would second that, Peggy. I think we need to look at our capital reserve policies, because a 12-year-old vehicle, we should be anticipating that these things are going to die off. And
I disagree. I agree that there is a life expectancy on a vehicle, but a 12-year-old car should not have a blown engine. A properly maintained car should last well beyond 140,000 miles.
We're both proof of that, right, Bruce?
Yeah.
Well, maybe at another time, we should have a discussion about what our capital reserve policy should be for vehicles.
Well, I think proper management and also the conversation about who we bring it to. I mean, we're bringing it to a dealer right now, and my suspicion is we're not getting the best prices. So,
no, I think it's just the opposite, Scott. I think that we're doing the work in-house in our own town barn, and not taking the routine maintenance to the dealer or a certified mechanic.
yeah, I think that's the conversation, right? Is getting a best price on work.
Oh, I don't know what's driving the decision. My comment is more around, do we have the right people doing the work?
Well, do we outsource this or keep it in-house, you know? I mean, there's a cost benefit analysis that we would need to go through.
But isn't that part of the study that we're looking to do, right?
It should be, yeah. We're going to be looking at how we handle our maintenance, all that stuff. So, and also what are appropriate parameters for life expectancy. And I know, you know, we can have a debate another time about whether or not 12-year-old cars should be in a fleet where you need a reliable vehicle, because this is going to keep happening. We've had 4 this year. All these cars were over 10 years old. There was the Beach and Rec truck, there was Bill McMinn's car, and there was Chief Drum's car, and now we got this one. So, and they were all over 100,000 miles. So I see a pattern. But, you know,
I don't want to prolong this discussion tonight, but I think we are gaining some experience with our police vehicles through leasing programs. And I'm wondering whether before we approach budget season, we ought to just investigate whether there are other ways to get use of vehicles for public works and other town functions. Have we learned anything through our leases with the police vehicles?
Well, we're moving everything over to a lease-based program. As these pieces of equipment come up for replacement, they're moving over into a lease, right, Stacy?
Yeah, we actually started that about 5 years ago, where we actually rated all of our vehicles in our fleet to see where they would fall in a replacement cycle. And then we started these capital leases. So we'll lease them for 4 years and then we own them at the end of the lease. The problem is we really haven't updated the ratings from 4 or 5 years ago. And then the CIP committee, as well as the boards, decided to kind of put a pause on the program while we were researching on what kind of fleet study we could do. So that's where we are right now. We're about to embrace this fleet study to see where we are, what we need, what condition our vehicles are in, and then we'll move forward from there. But we did implement a lease program a few years ago.
When's that study starting? Is that coming up soon?
Yeah, we just signed a contract, I think, this week. So the guy's going to.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Good.
I mean, the idea is we want this for budget season. So things got a little delayed. We'd actually started this in May or June, but just with timing and availability, COVID just really threw a wrench into a lot of these studies. But I'm trying to get them going again. So.
And then the only thing I'd like to say, and I've said this before, is I understand we're buying this truck off of the state contract. And it certainly doesn't appear to be a frivolous vehicle as far as, you know, it's a base car. But I do think it would be nice if we afforded our local businesses opportunity to price match whenever possible. It may not have been possible. You may have done this here, but and they couldn't. And if they can't, that's fine. But wherever we chance to source something locally, I think
yes,
we can avail ourselves of that. I'm not trying to suggest this is one of them. I'm just using this as a platform to say that.
Yeah, I agree, Bruce.
I guess the question is, can we do that? I mean, can we
We can
I
get
guess if
lower
it's
than
off state
bid.
bid, yeah, if it's off state bid, then there's no issue in terms of, right, you're just going and taking.
If we can get lower than state bid,
Yeah.
great. Otherwise, you know, we're free to go with the state bid, assuming that they've already gone through the vetting process.
Right. Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving the special appropriation request for the public works in the amount of $24,481.98 to replace the 2008 Ford Escape hybrid SUV, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. It passes. Great, thank you. And John, I think you're the next one up as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, so discuss and take action to approve awarding the contract for the Race Hill Road Drainage Improvement Project. Can I have a motion?
Before you motion, I need to just read into the record that the full motion will be to approve awarding the contract for the Race Hill Road Drainage Improvement Project to Dorita and Sons Construction Company, Inc. of Middletown, Connecticut, for a total bid amount of $124,000.
Moved.
Okay.
Second. Is this a project on the CIP?
Yes, this has been budgeted. It's in the major roads accounts.
And do you want to just give a quick overview of what it is?
Sure. So what this is it's for construction of a storm drainage system in Race Hill Road. It's needed. It's sort of the first step before we reclaim and pave the road. It's lacking drainage, which has been a problem. So it's pretty extensive. It's 1,000 feet of concrete pipe in the road and 9 catch basins, a stormwater quality treatment unit, and all of this work is to be done in the town road right of way. And so the project went out to bid. It was advertised on the Connecticut DAS website. And we received 11 bids. Back in June, I did an engineer's opinion of cost on this, and that came out to $148,000. So we have, there's a bid summary in the packet, I believe. Our recommendation is to award this contract to Dorita and Sons for an amount of $124,000. There are 2 other contractors that came in at a lower bid amount. And so really there was a very wide range of pricing here. The lowest bid was $71,250 and the highest bid was $423,000. So we are selecting, or we're recommending selecting the 3rd lowest bid for $124,000. We believe that's the lowest responsible bid. The other 2 companies in their statement of qualifications did not have municipal roadway construction projects. They didn't provide that. And Dorita and Sons provided, they had various roadway construction projects, including utilities, installations, and things very similar to this project, and a variety of towns in Connecticut. We checked their references and they gave glowing recommendations for this company. So it's our recommendation to select this company for award of the contract.
We haven't worked with them in the past, John?
No, I've never really heard of them before this. So we made sure to check references and do our due diligence.
Is this the entirety of Race Hill or just the north or just the
This
south?
is just the south end of Race Hill between Bradley Corners Road and Route 80.
It seems reasonable. It's always a little unnerving when you see bids come in significantly low like that based on what the costing had been, because you had an advisor come up with what the appropriate costing would be, right? You said in June, and they were expecting around 140,000, you said?
Right, 148,000 was
Yeah.
my opinion of cost. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think this is right there. If you look at sort of the middle 5 or 6 companies, they're all right in that ballpark. And, you know, that's the problem with, well, I shouldn't say it's a good problem to have. What we cast a very broad net. We advertise this on the state DAS website, and, you know, all the contractors that monitor this site get a notification that there's a new project. And the only sort of downside, if, you know, if there is one, is that I think you have companies that maybe are reaching, and it's not really where their experience lies. So this is actually a first for me, where I'm not recommending the lowest bidder, but in this case, it's very important to have a company that has experience working in the roadway while maintaining traffic, you know, the flow of traffic the whole time, essentially.
Okay. Any other questions for John? No? All right, all in favor of approving the awarding the contract for the Raceville Road Drainage Improvement Project so amended by Lauren, say aye.
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 Okay, great. All right. Okay, next item. Is Bill McMinn still out there and alive? Okay. Discuss and take action to approve awarding the RFP for the town facilities audit and facilities conditions assessment. I don't have, do you have an amendment that I need to make to that? I'm just reading the agenda. Do I have not the updated agenda? Because you said that you actually have.
Yeah, when you call for the motion on this as well, it will be updated to say that you are approving awarding the RFP for the town facilities audit and facilities conditions assessment to DRA Associates.
Okay. So amended. Can I have somebody
So moved.
make a motion? Okay.
Second.
Okay, great. So discussion. So I guess I don't know if Scott or Aaron want to lead a discussion, or you want Bill to just summarize.
Well, I think we sort of teed it up earlier. Bill, I don't know if you want to
Okay.
add color, but I think, you know, we talked about the quality of the vendors, and the process that we went through was pretty thorough. So I think collectively as a group, we were very comfortable with the vendor that we ended up with.
I agree.
I agree.
And I know this study, and I know I was involved more in the early part of developing the RFP, but the good thing is this is going to address a lot of things. I think in CIP we had a much larger budget for this with a much more limited focus, and we were able to expand the scope of the project to include a number of other areas that we need studies done in, and we could kind of bundle it all up, which I give a lot of credit also to our advisors on this, Colliers. And then so that not only we're looking at just our town buildings, but we're also looking at our emergency shelter, we're looking at ADA compliance, and then also utilization, which is something we've had a lot of discussion about how we use your buildings, not just the condition, but also, you know, how do we use our facilities. So I think there's going to be a lot of really good information out of this to help the town make good budget decisions for this next year. So what's the timeline to finish this right now? What are they saying?
It was a 75-day timeline. So it's up to us to, you know, start the time and, you know, go forward. I'm rounding 3 months. I think we should note the committee members too. Not only was Aaron and Scott Murphy on it, you had one of the Board of Finance members, Justin Murphy, Sam DeBurra was on it, and so was Dave Anderson. So I think, you know, the key is that we had a well-rounded group. I think we took a long time reviewing the 16 applications we had, or proposals, interviewing 5 firms, and then re-interviewing 2 to make the selection. So I think that's the key. I could talk a lot about the study, but you guys have been here a long time, so I'm sure we could talk about it later.
Just a quick question. The additional buildings that got added in, I'm surprised Island Avenue wasn't already included, but I agree that one should be in. The Hunter House, the Scranton House, and the 2 firehouses, What's the thinking in adding them in?
You want me to speak on that? I think the key was the use is not the condition assessment, but how can we multitask or multi-use these facilities? They added the library too, because the library has some community spaces. So I really believe the intent was to see all our community use spaces and how can we work together. And we definitely reached out to the 2 fire companies, and they were very happy to have us review their facilities. The North Madison, for example, we've looked at that a few times for having an election location there, but there's some issues with parking and no elevator to the 2nd floor. But both of those companies were very receptive to, coordinating and meeting with the town for, if their building can be used for other town uses, knowing that what they do is priority, they were very receptive to that.
Did you consider the Lesage House at all?
No.
We did not.
I think the one thing that will come out of the study is perhaps also how going forward we kind of manage all these facilities. We have like an operational obviously person responsible for that, but I think the one thing we've learned is that it's like a jigsaw puzzle in town, trying to figure out how to solve problems, where to put people, where to provide services. And I think it's worth this board discussing at one point in the future about establishing a more permanent facilities committee. A lot of towns have that, so that instead of having to have these ad hoc committees on one specific property, just having a standing facilities committee that is, volunteer and town driven, that kind of can, be an oversight, but also just an overall umbrella for all these different assets in town. And I think it's worth talking about that and seeing maybe what some other towns do when it comes to.
I love that idea, Peggy. I think that's well worth it. I just think, the conversations we had on this committee were, we talked a lot about the sort of the integral nature and sort of the system nature of all of our buildings in town, and, how the use plays out across these different buildings. And I think, if we could have more of that longer term conversation as our needs change over time, I think would be really powerful.
So
clearly led by Bill and Dave and Sam. Aaron and I will be happy to support.
So we're expecting a product of this is an inventory of the spaces and the uses that they potentially could house.
That's just one of the aspects. The condition assessment is a big deal as well. And then the big thing, I think, is the emergency shelter needs and, how we use our facilities. I think they're going to dovetail together.
We also talked, Bruce, about, we really pushed the companies a lot on, going beyond just an inventory and providing some meaningful recommendations that are looked at in conjunction with the strategic plan and other, long-term planning and demands that are from various constituencies. And the thought was that, that perhaps might be a part 2 that might be too much to try to do in this one. So to that point, we had talked about as a committee staying involved with guiding the facilities assessment, because, just to make sure that the company's doing what it is that they're hitting all of those points that we want to make sure that they get at. So I don't know if that answers your question.
And with the selection of DRA, I do feel that the strategic nature of the conversation was really apparent. I think they're really going to give us some really solid recommendations of how we use our buildings. And I think they have a lot of experience to back that up, which was encouraging.
And I think we had, 13 original bids?
11,
right?
11, yeah.
Was it 11? And then it was kind of whittled down to 5, and then you guys took a deep dive into 5. So it was a very thorough process, and I think we're getting a lot of bang for our buck.
Well, and then we poor Dave and Bill, we pushed them to go and call other towns for references as well. on
No
the
problem.
on the
They went above and beyond, by the way.
on the two that we narrowed it down to, we wanted to hear, because sometimes the presentation is we wanted to see the proof, so we
Right.
asked them to do that. So I feel that it was a thorough process. I'm comfortable.
Bill, Dave, and Sam get an extra cup of coffee tomorrow morning.
And don't forget, in the memo I sent, the committee volunteered to participate in the follow-up of this once you select.
I don't remember that conversation, Bill.
So that's up to you,
We have
Peggy.
another one. We have another one that they can participate in, right, Bill?
All right, shall we vote? Let's vote.
Okay,
Getting late.
all in favor of approving the awarding of the RFP as so amended by Lauren Ryan, say aye.
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 All right, aye. All right, great. All right, look forward to it. Next one, discuss the RFP process for the solar carport project at Daniel Han High School and Polson Middle School. Bill came to me, I guess, in the spring, and we had a big discussion about our energy use and utility needs, and he talked about the solar, the fact that we kind of have a need to add additional solar capacity to the town in order to meet some obligations we have contractually because of other projects we have in town and with Eversource, and also to ensure that we can get some financial benefit, to reducing our overall energy costs at the school. And so I know this was talked about in previous, I think last year, but I think there was also a lot of things going on last year in terms of the school district and what projects were going to be undertaken, and this kind of whole thing was tabled. So Bill came back with Woody Weiss, and they came up with kind of a new strategy because we really had a contractual issue where we had to add additional solar capacity. So I'm going to turn over to Bill. And so they've come up with a new kind of solar carport project. And then this went through the Board of Education. So Katie's joined us too. So go ahead, Bill.
So yeah, just a quick overview. We did have this location in the carports, and we went back and looked and see if there was other locations other than the parking lot. And we looked at the site. The high school is, big campus, but there's not room really for solar anywhere on the campus. All the open space is used. The areas that we looked at were one, Bauer Farm, that we did get a memo or an email from Gus. And I think that the cost analysis to run the wires from Bauer Farm to the schools, because you need to connect to the high school, you need to connect to Polson. That's what our agreement is for this particular project. If we want to look at stuff at the Bauer Farm at a later date on a different application, I think that might be feasible, but at this particular time, it just didn't make practical sense for numbers. We looked at some open space along the track and along the field, but a lot of people use that space. A lot of people park and like to watch their kids play out in the fields. So that was sort of ruled out, I think a lot of people were not in favor of that open space. So we ended up back to the parking lots, and the facilities committee was involved. The Board of Education had already approved the location, but the facility committee wanted to put a little more restrictions on not starting before November construction, and they wanted half of it to be in the parking lot at Polson and the other half to be at Hand. So that's just a quick overview. I don't know if Katie has anything to add, or if you have any specific questions. I'll let Katie go. Katie says no. So
Bill, you're good. Thank you.
If you have any questions, this is an RFP process. I talked to Peggy. She wanted you guys to be more involved. She might want to get a committee to help review and select, which I'm all, in favor. This is government. It's open. The more people involved, it takes a little longer, but so what? That's time is not the issue. It's to make sure that we do it open. Everyone gets a fair shot, and it's open for the public, for everyone to see. So I'm not against it. I support any process you want. The key though to this is the longer we take, the more it will cost us relative to the ZREX that we were approved. We were supposed to have it in and up and running by July 1st of this calendar year. Because of the COVID, we got it pushed back till October. We won't make that date. So every month we do lose some funding, but it's basically, I think, a small amount for every month. If we can get it in before the end of the year, I still think it's a very successful project. The only other point I want to make is it's no capital to us. This project and this RFP, just like the other ones we have done, it's the capital's in the investment. We have a fixed rate. That's the deal. What are we going to buy the solar back for 20 years? And then are they going to turn it over to us for what cost? So that's a summary. Happy to answer any questions. Unfortunately,
The only thing I would add is the November timeline that the board or the finance committee decided on was really based on our traffic patterns are likely to be very different this fall than other years typically, because we anticipate we'll have a lot more kids being driven. We're encouraging a lot more kids to be driven to school because of COVID. And so the facilities committee really felt it was important to push any construction out as far as we possibly could to allow for some recognition of what that traffic pattern might look like in that area between Polson and the high school.
I'm very much a believer in the merits of this project. Billy, I wanted to ask you how this RFP might differ from the earlier one we did, especially in terms of soliciting a lot of information, which I would call financial disclosures from the bidders. Is this RFP document request evolved or different than the one that was used several years ago?
So I would say it's substantially the same. We had it reviewed by the town attorney. I expect to be reviewed again by the town attorney. And I don't remember that being the issue, the financial part. But you know, that's one of the things that we wanted to talk about is, you know, if you're comfortable with it, we send it to the town attorney. Why spend money up front when he's already looked at it? So we're happy to add things that you think it might be weak on, but I don't remember that being one of them.
I guess I'd like to look to Scott and Bruce and search your memory. It seems to me last time we didn't feel there was as much financial disclosure as there should have been. Is that your memory?
I agree. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the idea here is to have more of a panel, you know, an RFP panel similar to what we've done on the facility study, so that we have a member of the Board of Education, Board of Selectmen, and Board of Finance as part of that decision-making body this time, and Bill, and we can talk about other people that we might want to include in that, so we'd have a broader review. And I think there's also going to be a much broader solicitation out for people to participate in the bidding process.
I think that's huge, Peggy. I agree with you. I just think the process we just went through with the facility study proved out just the collaboration across boards, across town employees. I just think it was really powerful to work the system that way. So I think we should continue that best practice.
So the only thing I would add to that is, and this was helpful, Bill, when you presented to the Board of Ed and the Facilities Committee, was there was a default, like this is a contract, a town contract, and we are providing the space. So the Board of Ed felt like this is a fine space. So proof of concept, I think you have the Board of Ed's approval on. In terms of the contract itself, I think there was a timeline or some sort of resolution by the town way back when that needs to be made good on. It was the way that we understood it. So I don't know, Billy, if you want to give any history, but it was my understanding if we didn't start this in November, we would be defaulting again.
So we have to have it complete and up and running by October 1st, or we're going to lose money every month. So that we're already going to be in trouble with that. We're hoping it only takes a few months and then we get it up. So if we start, I'll say November 15th, and it takes us to the end of the year, we'll lose October, November, December, 3 months out of the period of time, which is multiple years. So it will cost us money the longer we wait. It won't make the project not feasible. It will just cost us a little more. And unfortunately, Woody's on vacation and he has all those numbers memorized. And I know you guys talked earlier about having, you know, a review of all our energy stuff. And Woody, you know, he's got all those numbers memorized and he just loves talking about that stuff. So when you're ready, you know, we want to talk about the numbers and the cost benefits and how it affects us. You know, I think he's the guy. I'm the facility guy. And I say that, you know, my history is they've been paying back the way they said they would. But, you know, we're doing it more for the environment, I think, than for the energy savings and the cost. To be green energy, to give back to the community, to do the right thing. That's how I've always took it. That's how I always been directed by, for many years, by the Board of Selectmen, when Al was probably one of the first guys to make the recommendation of doing, I forgot, we were going to do 20% in the year 2018. And I remember that was probably 10 years before that. So I think the big picture is we're trying to do the right thing for the environment, not just save money.
Bill,
I love what you just said. I think that's spot on, Billy, but I think, and maybe this is a conversation for a future meeting, but I would love to see us, and Bruce, I think this is something we talked about in one of our previous meetings back a couple of years ago, but I'd love to see a conversation about the energy plan. What is the overall plan for energy savings over a 5-year period so that we're not treating projects as just one-offs? And I think that's what we've been doing. I think, at least my understanding, is we've been kind of looking at projects one by one. And I think, you know, if I felt like we were kind of following a bigger picture, a plan, and I get this one is, you know, clearly we've got some timelines, we've got some, you know, some things we got to go accomplish given the ZREX, but I think we got to be looking towards a bigger picture here.
And I think it will be part of the facility study. We, you know, won't really capitalize on that point, but, you know, Woody's been very strong and a very advocate in all my projects, everything I do, especially when it comes to bigger projects. He's always in my ear telling me how we need to look at the, you know, the green or the energy efficient and the geothermal. You know, those are not cutting edge, but they're not the simple remove the rooftop unit and put the other rooftop unit back in the same place. And those are very energy efficient today versus the ones we have. So you can make an argument that it's a simpler project. You can make energy efficient with gas fired units and remove the rooftop unit, put it back. But we're looking at geothermal, and we're looking at a lot of energy stuff, the solar, the wind farm. I love that one. I think we've talked about the Rockland Preserve before too, but I forgot what the issues were on that. We've looked at solar farms. Woody's, you know, looked at those a lot. We looked at the dump. We looked at a bunch of places. So all good stuff. But I don't think for now, tonight, that's just a general conversation.
Right. And
Yeah,
Scott,
I think
you're right. It's what we had envisioned when we started the strategic plan. You know, a statement from the Board of Selectmen via the strategic plan, ultimately from the town. But you know, when we have an event, a replacement event, an installation event, a new build event, we want to see the you know, the appropriate energy efficient installation, right? The geothermal, the solar, whatever it might be, and build that into the parameters of the design of news, right? So when Billy has to go replace a school roof, you know, we would have accommodations for that, and he would know going in that that he was going to do that, and we wouldn't be surprised when it came back with a higher bill because of it, right?
Right.
I think, Bill, you know, just for anybody who might watch this, you've said a couple of things that appear contradictory, but they're not. You've said that after October 1st, it's going to be more expensive or we're going to lose money. But this is not a capital outlay project for the town, right? So how can we lose money if we're not going to spend any money?
Correct. Thank you for the correction. So what will happen is we won't get the same benefit from the ZREX, which the state gives us money for. So And if I say we're gonna pay 20 cents a KW, we might pay 20.2 cents. So it will cost us more for the energy cost the longer we stretch it out.
Right. And of course, you've explained that to us in the past. I just wanted to have it on, in this particular meeting for people who haven't been following it, that
Right.
what in fact happens is we have to pay a little bit more for the energy because the supplier is getting a little bit less credit
Right.
from the state.
And I don't think 2 or 3 months is a big deal on that cost. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I know one of the things that was impactful for the board was how much of the buildings this energy would supply.
Yes, I don't know that number. It's 100 KW, and I don't have that off the top of my head. I did not prepare for that answer. I know they're 100 KW for each one. The Polson would be 100 KW, and the high school would be one significantly, less than a third, probably even less than that.
I think that was something that was obviously attractive to the board, but also, I mean, I've heard the term one-off. My understanding, Billy, when you presented to the board, was this was the completion of a contract that the town, not the Board of Ed, but the town had committed to.
They committed to the Z-Rex and us committing to doing 100 KW to Polson and 100 KW to Hand, and they have to be attached to those two buildings. That's the max we could do. We could do less. And one of the other points is if we don't want to not do it, if we default on it and don't do this, we won't be able to ever do solars under this process because we had problems with the roof. We did the same thing with the roof, a much more substantially bigger one. When it came to looking at the roof and the cost to modify the roof to allow the system to be up there, it just wasn't cost effective. And, to have a roof that is in jeopardy of not working or have an issue with it leaking is not something we want to deal with. So we weren't able to do that.
And in order to secure our place on this, we had to put up a bond, right?
Yes.
Not a large amount of money, but
I believe it was $800 a school, and it's at least 2 years ago we did it. So I don't remember the exact cost, but it was at least 2 or 3 budget years ago.
Are we looking to vote on this tonight? What are we doing?
Well, I think we're just looking for your support. And I think Peggy's looking for maybe some direction on the committee so we can pull the trigger. I put some dates. This is a draft form, but we really need to move forward on it. So if the committee's in favor and Peggy wants to make some kind of recommendation, I'd love to have a committee formed and us to finalize it and put it out. I don't think we're looking for you to approve the RFP. I think we're just talking in concepts and looking for someone that might be against it or think that we need to wait or not move forward. I don't think we're looking for a formal approval.
I apologize. I actually had to go find my charger for my laptop because it's been on so long that my battery's running out and my headphones also ran out of juice. So, but yeah, I think the intention is, this was meant as a briefing about what's to come, and that we would look to do a kind of broader RFP committee that just would include some of the other boards and just because I think just the history of the project and also the complexity.
And she's gone.
I think we're just looking for anybody not in support of it, and then we're going to move on. And I think Peggy's going to look at you offline for your input. And so I nominate Aaron and Scott, but it's not my place. And I think Justin Murphy. Yeah, getting those Murphys all.
We got a good flow in committee now. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I don't know if I would recommend Sam on it. I don't, and
Sam's always debatable. Yeah, you're right.
Katie wants to be on it. She looks like she wants to be on it.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Katie has to be on it.
And Dave Anderson would do it, but I'd hate to put him on another thing. I think that if it was myself and a couple board members, I think we could roll it. And Woody's going to want to be involved. So I don't think we need Dave or Sam, not that they wouldn't have great participation. I think we want to spare them But I think Woody would love to be involved. I think if we got a couple board members like yourself and somebody from the Board of Finance, and of course, Katie would be always welcome, but I can't recommend anything. I'm just making suggestions. I think Peggy's gone, so think I've answered all your questions.
I think there's two conversations here, though, that I think we're having. One is, do we support the carports, solar carports at Polson and Hand? One. And two, do we, as the Board of Selectmen, want an energy plan and conversation to happen at a future subsequent meeting? And I think that's a yes.
So Bill, Scott, I don't mean to contradict you, but I believe that the
allowed.
reason why I'm here and staying up so late was that the proof of concept was because it was on school property. So the approval of the actual concept was the Board of Education, and then the contract itself, which is rightly a Board of Selectmen or a town decision, is what was on the table for tonight. But
to decide, to vote.
No.
Oh, that I don't know.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think we said the same thing, actually.
Yeah.
I may not have said it very well.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
I think we need to move forward unless you're against it. I think we move forward. I go forward with the process, and we select a committee to help review it, either before we send it out or, after. We could always do an amendment. The dates are I think I have it for the 15th. I left it pretty far out in case the committee wanted to get together before we send it out to finalize it. But, that's sort of the board. And unfortunately, I know I've had conversations with Peggy, so I know what I believe she wants is the committee to review and be part of the review process. I can't speak for her, but I know that's what we talked about. And the committee.
I think we should move forward.
Thank you, Al.
I agree. Move forward.
Bruce. Aaron.
Yeah, sure. Yes.
All right, and we have the support.
I don't know much about this, so
So Lauren, can you note that? Do you want me to continue running the meeting?
Yeah, I just want to thank you all. I thought Board of Ed meetings were long. This is.
We have 18 things on the agenda.
Yes.
So it's not surprising that this was
none of them, Aaron, include me.
Let's keep rolling.
Good night.
Well, the next one, I think you can cut me off and put Scott. I assume beach and rec policies and procedures. You don't want me on.
Yes, let's move so we're going to move to number 14, which is the town beach policies and public safety concerns.
Who is that?
Scott's on.
Oh.
No, I'm still on. You're cutting me off, right? Oh, I can leave the meeting.
Did Scott leave too?
Scott cut himself off?
Oh, there's Scott. There's
no,
Sam.
the update moves so quickly that sometimes it changes the order of people. So I tried to kick Bill off and I kicked Scott off by mistake.
I'm asleep. Sorry.
Still have a quorum. Let's keep moving.
Yep, I got an email from Peggy this morning, and she wanted to have some information. So real quickly, she wanted to know beach pass sales, breakdown of number of passes sold by category and total revenue. And then I don't know if she sent it. We have that monthly spreadsheet with all the totals for gate counts and what have you. But to date, we have sold 2,568 adult beach passes, 2,545 senior passes, and 87 veteran passes. And let's see, 330 resident daily and 180 non-resident. So right now, our total revenue is $129,470. In retrospect, we had through, I can't even remember the name of the company. The one that flunked. 4,697 passes we sold last year.
How does that compare to last year, Scott? Are we in the same neighborhood or?
Well, we sold 4697 last year. We're at 5200 this year.
Oh, wow. Oh, significant more.
So,
Wow.
so I think a lot of people found the website and were able to purchase online. A ton of people went through the mail right at the beginning, so we were inundated that way. But moving forward, everybody that bought a pass this year can renew it next year. So we'll be doing a daily report and sending passes out. The only change would be is if they change cars or plates, they'll need to let us know, and we'll have to get that word out to the people what they have to do if they have that incident. The other thing she asked for was and this goes into where we're heading. As she indicated earlier, Labor Day is typically when we stop manning the gates, and she wanted me to explore the possibility of manning the gates for the rest of the weekends in September for Madison residents with stickers, proof of residency, and if we had non-residents, we would be charging them a daily rate. So I did a labor analysis, and if I continue with the 2 gate guards per gate for those 6 weekend or 6 days, it would be $4,700. Or if I go 1 per gate, it would be $2,350 for that. That's unbudgeted for that month. I do have daytime park patrol, park monitors, and evening patrol all the way up through Thanksgiving. Right now, I only have 10. After Labor Day, I will have 10 staff available. That's it. We do have a number of college students that are distance learning, so they are actually home and they're willing to work. So,
Scott, can you give us a sense of, there were these issues earlier on in the summer. Can you give us just a sense of where things have been? Have we kind of seen things quiet down? Have there been, have we kind of made any sense of, putting aside July 4th weekend, have we been able to make any kind of sense of like when we have these huge crowds and, just as a learning for
right. Well, it's helped that the state loosened up a little bit and they haven't closed as much in the beach. As soon as we hit tail end of July, the beginning of August, the beach participation typically goes down. So we did close for a little bit on Saturday at Surf Club and West Wharf. But that at East Wharf did not. It was getting close, but the tides helped. But State Park closed on Saturday. They did not close on Sunday. It seems to be when they close, we get hit because you do a Google search and the first beach is East Wharf. So we tried to mitigate that with the no walk-ins unless you're a local resident, and that seemed to really work. The residents in that area were very happy about that, and I think it worked. When we look at, I'm gonna have to try to. This spreadsheet is huge, but in total for the season, we had 21,159 resident cars come through our gates, yet we only had 214 non-resident cars. So majority was our residents utilizing our beaches.
Is that to a large extent because we made decisions to have residents only?
Yeah, I think that helped a lot because they felt more comfortable being able to go down, that there was going to be space. We did not open the parking lot any larger than we did from the beginning of the season, which helped with the beach capacity. And that's where we had to stick with everything was total beach capacity, even though we may have had parking, it's the number of people that were sitting on the beach, and that was determined by the tide. So, I mean, and it's always a moving target with the tide every week. You may have a low tide the beginning of the weekend, and then all of a sudden you're at high. So it closes up and you have too many people on the beach. So we have to constantly monitor it.
I'm back. Zoom has been having lots of problems today, but somehow I got booted out, and then I tried 3 different devices. So, but I'm back now. So
hopefully it holds up. So I mean, I think I've covered everything, Peggy.
Okay.
With the numbers. The only thing that I did not cover in your question was whether we have any programming scheduled for the gym, which I answered you, and that was it's just been in a waiting pattern because we don't know really what's going on. I'm still waiting. I got all the fall sports wanting to go, more than conditioning, and we're still waiting for those results to come in, hopefully by the end of this week. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, I think I'm sure you touched on the fact then that, you know, we're done staffing everything after Labor Day. I know some people in the Beach and Rec Commission had actually recommended that we try to staff through the month of September. I don't know if you touched on this.
Yeah, I gave everybody a cost projection.
Yeah.
Of the two people per gate for the rest of the weekends, or 1 per gate for the rest of the weekends. So
and I think this is really going to have to be are we going to continue to have a problem, right? We did actually this weekend, Saturday, Hammonessa did shut down, and we did close down all 3 beaches. It was very busy on Saturday, I know, because I visited the gates.
Sunday we didn't.
Yeah, so it's going to be hit or miss.
But neither did State Park on Sunday.
Right.
Which, I mean, that I was telling everybody that seems to be the key. If the state park closes up, they'd flow to us. So.
Is there any advantage right now for us to go back to residents only, given the executive order?
Well, that expires on the 9th from the state.
Oh, so you're talking about the walk-in? The walk-in?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the walk-in, you know, I feel that it's very difficult to justify taking that next step unless you have extraordinary circumstances. And I think that the power outages was those extraordinary circumstances.
Right. And I think with school starting, I think people are going to try to get
declines
back.
Anyways. Yeah.
Correct. Because they're busy doing other things.
So, you know, and so I think we'll take a wait and see approach of how things shake out through Labor Day, and then we can reassess if we think September is going to be a crazy month.
Right. If it's a problem, I told everybody else, Peggy, that I have right now, I have 10 people on staff that are going to be around through Thanksgiving with distant learning and everything, even though, and they're college age kids. So, so I do have some staff available to try to cover everything.
Okay. And obviously, I think that one thing we need to talk about probably in September is just where we're coming out on some of the additional expenditures over the summer.
Yep.
Because we did obviously put through
Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah, Monday, Tuesday, which originally was in the budget, then it was taken out of the budget, and then we kind of supported bringing it back in as we needed it because of the crowd situation. And then just so we can have a handle on where we are in terms of over budget and under budget. So, and that'll be more September conversation once the season's over.
Right.
But the good thing is we've, you know, sold a lot of beach passes.
Yep.
So.
We made it. And we're making it through. We have a week and a half to go. So.
Yeah. So any other questions for Scott? Because I think we still have.
You have Sam.
Have Sam if he's still awake. I guess the next thing was just to, and I actually did put a little bit of a slide together on this because we were talking about this morning. This is to talk about the update on Storm Isaias response. And, oh wait.
That's Sam.
Hold on a second, let me get this up. But I think the really what we actually had an after action meeting this morning with, you know, the different services on to talk about, you know, what went wrong, what didn't go wrong, you know, all this stuff. And let me just get this slide up here real quick. Get back to, I had to reopen everything. Share. I was trying to remember what I'm trying to say in here. And here we go. And basically, two things that we've done so far is one is you were all copied on a letter that I sent to the regulatory committee just on our Eversource response. And this letter was built on, you know, some recommendations and just observations through Sam and his team and Chief Drum. And so we kind of, that's available on the town website if anybody's interested in reading more detail in the public. And that's kind of focusing on where we saw the problems with Eversource. But then what we've also tried to do is an internal after action assessment. And we had that first call today. And I think people shared their views about what went well, what went wrong, and how can we improve. And I'll let Sam talk about that in a few minutes. Just the other things that we're doing is tracking the expenditures because we hope to get a lot of the money back from FEMA. And I'm hoping in September we can put some numbers in front of the board just so people knows what we spent in terms of cleanup and overtime and all that stuff. But the other thing that I want to do is go back and look at, this is probably our 5th storm in 10 years where we've had extended power outages. And particularly after Irene and Sandy, I know there were a lot of recommendations made that what we should be doing as a town to improve our resources and improve how we respond to storms. But you know, a lot of times what happens is these recommendations are made and then they kind of take back burner through in the budget process. And so I want to kind of dust some of those things off and look at it, what has been done and what has not been done and what we should be doing, and try to take more of a long-term planning approach to mitigating the impact of these storms, because this is a regular occurrence now. These aren't one-off 100-year storms. We're having those every 2 years on average now. So that's something that we talked about in the call and something I want to kind of move forward as part of the budgeting process. And then the emergency operation shelter study is something that's part of that facilities review. And I think there'll be a lot of information out of that because every time we have a storm, we have to go through and say, okay, what has a generator? What has showers? What has internet? What's not in a flood zone? It's like a jigsaw puzzle trying to figure out how we open up services for the community when there are power outages. So I think that's going to be really helpful information for us in terms of investment and planning in the future. So that'll all be a more active dialogue during CIP and the budgeting process this year. But you know, our team is kind of pulling a lot of this information together. So I'm just going to let Sam give his highlights of what he saw as from an after action assessment, and you know, just share with the board some of the things he shared with us this morning internally.
Okay, you ready? And Scott, I was listening to you and Billy trash talking, so I won't forget it. All right, so ISIS actually, or ICASIS, whatever you say it, actually got here 12 hours early. It was supposed to arrive overnight Tuesday into Wednesday morning. It ended up getting here approximately 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesday. That was due to it picked up speed with the forward movement, and it was going about 30 miles an hour. I think it might even got up to 35 miles an hour, which actually benefited us. Normally a tropical storm, we endure it for 10, 12, 14 hours. This one was only 5 hours. So it was out of here by 7. And when it left at 7, 81% of our town was out of power. The fire departments and EMS had already responded to 79 calls for service in that 5-hour period. And the police, I think, responded to another 40 or more. And within the 24 hours, we were well over 200 calls for service. We ended up with 60 to 65 roads that were impassable by fire and EMS apparatus. 30 of those roads had isolated neighborhoods, and those neighborhoods were isolated for 2 to 6 days, which I find unfathomable. But you know, we were at the mercy of Eversource. We did have 7 houses sustain damage from being struck by fallen trees. Our dispatch center in that time period did get quickly overwhelmed, and the dispatching of the fire apparatus was passed off to each firehouse where they manned, you know, someone on a radio and just coordinated with dispatch. So we did have a problem with our internet when Comcast went down for 7 hours. Our internet and email from Town Hall was out of service. So we are looking into a satellite backup. And then the Eversource never sent us a make safe crew. So normally in their storm policies, you know, the procedure is they go out and make everything safe, and then they start restoration. And during that make safe process is when we would access all these neighborhoods and get, you know, people so they can get out and get emergency access in if we needed to. And I know Yankee Peddler Path was one of the most hard hits. There was like 4 areas where, you know, the trees were impassable. So once you got past one, you ran into another one about 200 feet down the road. And so there was, in that neighborhood alone, there was probably about 400 people that were stuck for at least 2 days, 2 to 3 days. We couldn't even get into one of the houses, got hit by a tree. We couldn't even get in there to assess the damage on the house. And then, you know, of course, by day 3, you know, the homeowners just started to take everything into their own hands. And I was telling the, you know, everybody this morning, I was beyond my belief how no one here got injured or killed during the storm. You know, we can't touch the power lines or touch any trees that are touching the power lines until the Eversource crew comes out and grounds them. And, you know, whether people don't realize it, but those primary lines, they're anywhere from 4,800 volts to 23,000. And as they started the restoration process, if they flipped the switch, whether somebody was cutting a tree and somehow that line got energized, that person would have been, you know, electrocuted and probably died immediately. You know, and at some point I can't blame them. You know, they're stuck and they want to get out. All the emergency services did a fantastic job. You know, trying to gain access, and even Chief Drum, we kind of hijacked the tree crew one night on Wednesday night and went around and opened up as many places as we could, because those guys are certified to work around the power lines. And but wherever they couldn't cut from the bucket, they wouldn't cut. So we did as much as we could without the power company. Then the other problem we had was once the power got cleared, we had Frontier and Comcast lines that were down, still blocking some roads, and that took a couple more days to clear up to get access. But people were just driving over them. It's amazing what people do. You know, we probably should have a campaign out to educate people on the electrical safety during storms. But that's about it. And it took, and you know, I know Scott and Peggy were pretty well involved, and I kept you guys updated as the status of things. But Summerhill Road was another area that was hit pretty bad. You know, the upper Summerhill and from Heatherwood up, you couldn't get in there. There was at least 3 or 4 trees down in each section. So it was a pretty powerful storm. Unfortunately, it didn't last for 14 hours. Otherwise, we'd probably still be picked up. And there still is a lot of, you know, debris on the side of the road that needs to be picked up. You know, as you drive around, you see it. And we are trying to work on, John Ionak was making a list. There's trees that have branches hanging in them that are loose. They're trying to make a list to see if we can get Eversource to come with their tree crews and take care of those before they fall down and take out more power lines. But that's about it. You know, we are looking at, like I told Peggy this morning, I'll probably come back for a special appropriation on some of the satellite stuff to get things up and running. We didn't have the EOC open, but if we did, we would have been dead in the water without internet. And I think in the future, it's probably beneficial to have the EOC open. Or just this storm, we just didn't have the manpower. I had one guy on vacation. And so it was kind of a manpower issue. But I think we're just going to have to, figure out who's going to take that person's spot, even if they're on vacation. So there's some, planning we have to do. And, it's not that I don't think anything would have changed in the response, mode. The guys, like I said, the guys in the street did a fantastic job, and they cut in where they could until they hit the power lines. But everything that wasn't involved in power lines was cleared by Wednesday night. So that's all I got. Unless you have any questions, I know we've been here a while. I'm gonna have to get some overtime for this one.
The short meeting. This is easy.
I think you guys got to go back to having the day meeting in August. Never mind piling it all up at the end of the month.
Peggy, you're talking on mute.
I was going to say, but Scott, didn't you want to add more stuff to the agenda tonight?
Stop it. Troublemaker. Hey, thanks to huge thanks to Sam and Jack Drum and our EMS folks. I mean, honestly, it was a privilege to watch them work during this storm, and we have amazing people in this town, so we're very grateful.
Yeah, I will say that we have a seasoned leadership team in our emergency operations, all the firehouses and, PD, Sam, everybody knows what they're doing. They've been through these before. Each storm is always different and you have different experiences, but the good thing is they know the drill. And so we're very fortunate with that, to have these guys all working, hard for the community. And I benefited tremendously from that, from their experience. So, and their perspective about how this was different versus other storms, and they continue to see problems and make suggestions, and yet we don't see changes sometimes in terms of how the utility company reacts to this. So, which can be frustrating, I'm sure, because they've offered some good solutions, I think, at times to make things better. So, I think that to be continued is probably because I think what we'd like to do is start putting together a short list of things that we think really do need to be done sooner rather than later to make sure that for the next event, and there will be another event. I think we've got to accept the fact now that we're in an environment where we're going to continue to see these, severe weather systems come through and create havoc on our utility grid. So there'll be kind of a short list of things that we think are urgent and are necessary and might require special appropriation. And then I think there are other things that we should start putting through the normal budget process and the CIP process to get them at least on the radar in terms of what we should be doing as a town. And there'll be some things that'll come out of this EOC or shelter study. Chief Drum had some ideas even today talking about having more of a mobile EOC rather than having a building, having something mobile that we could have a permanent location for emergency operations equipment. Right now they have things stored in closets and have to drag it out into the Hammond Asset Room and set up the whole operation. And it's not even a room that we really have 100% control over either. It's a Board of Education room. So there's things like that, I think, that are longer term decisions that we'll be kind of facing through the CIP and budgeting process. Any more questions for Sam? And I see John is on as well, but his team has worked really hard as well to make sure that the roads get cleared. And I know he'll be wanting money for the stump dump soon to clear that out. So thanks for hanging in there tonight, Sam. It didn't get the headlines it deserved, actually. So
we're not about headlines.
Yeah, I know. I somebody will watch this though during the day because it is going to be available on YouTube. So with that, I guess the next item on the agenda, are we ready to move on?
Yes.
All right, appointments, and I guess, can I get a motion to accept the resignation of Mary Barnaby from the Coastal Resiliency Commission?
So moved with gratitude.
Second.
Okay, great. And obviously, Mary, we're very grateful for her service. I don't think she's on this call, but she's moving on to a very important position, working for the American Red Cross, the New York Metro Red Cross. We wish her all the well. And, she was a great asset to that commission, I know. And so she will be missed. And I know that's another big new commission that just came into effect, 2 years ago, and it's got a lot of work to do. So we'll have to look to finding somebody else. But with that, I guess all in favor of accepting her resignation with regrets, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mary, too, and wish you all the best of luck. Next item on the agenda is, do we have tax abatements? Because I don't have my.
Yep, I'll move $47,430.99
Second.
in refunds.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay, great. Citizens' comments.
Did anybody hang in?
I know.
I can't imagine why no one's
Gus
there.
is probably there. Gus has to be there.
No, the only public still on is Lauren Noble from the Ad Hoc Government Study Committee. And it should be noted that Lauren Noble has a newborn baby. So the fact that she's still on is
Hanging on
pretty
is
commendable.
impressive. Wow.
I'm hoping maybe she just forgot to turn the meeting off.
Actually, you were up at all hours with a newborn, right? So,
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess then, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, great. Meeting's
Aye.
adjourned. Thanks for everybody staying in there. I'm sorry I dropped off. But
Bye, guys.
till our next one. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.